101, good afternoon. This is the August 2nd, 2022 meeting of the Landmark Preservation Commission. I'll call this meeting to order. We'll begin with introductions of the commissioners. I'll get started. My name is Kelly Wemple. I'm an architect and I was nominated by the American Institute of Architects. So next, I don't have my cheat sheet of alphabetical order in front of me. So I think it's Gary.
Hello, I'm Gary Petrie. I'm an architect and I was nominated by the Denver Planning Board.
All right. Larry.
Hi, my name is Larry Sykes. I'm an architect and I was nominated by History Colorado.
Great. Erica.
Hi, I'm Erica Warzel. I'm a architectural historian and preservation consultant, and I was nominated by the community at large.
And Anne.
I am Ann Wattenberg. I'm an architect nominated by the American Institute of Architects.
Great. And it looks like Graham just joined us. Graham, you're just in time for introductions. Could you introduce yourself? I think he's frozen. Graham, if you can hear us, we can't hear you. Maybe we'll let him work on his troubleshooting. Oh, Graham. Are you there? Guess not. The video moved for me, so I thought maybe he was with us. All right, we'll let Graham work on troubleshooting and try that again later. Okay, so we do have two meeting records up for our approval today, the July 5th and July 19th meeting records. Were there any comments on these? And actually, this does put us in a little bit of a weird spot because there's only 5 of us. And I know I wasn't present at the July 5th meeting, so normally I'd abstain from voting. But
And I wasn't present at the 19th meeting.
yeah, so that means we won't have enough votes to pass the motion of approving these minutes. Is that right? What do you recommend we do here, Jen?
It's my understanding that, and Nate, correct me if I'm wrong, that votes for meeting record are different from votes on projects, and so you can, it's a majority of those present. But Nate, tell me if I'm wrong.
No, you're right, Jen. So long as there's no objection by the members present, the motion or the minutes may be approved.
Okay, and it looks like Graham's with us now too, so we might have one more vote. It looks like Graham was at both of those meetings. Graham, we're discussing the meeting records right now.
Sounds good. I don't have any comment.
Okay, do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself since we just finished introductions?
Certainly. Graham Johnson, Preservation Project Manager and nominated by the Denver Planning Board. And I think over the Zoom struggle here. Sorry for that delay. And it froze, so back for keeps.
All right, thanks. So it sounds like as long as it's a majority of those voting, we can pass the records. So we could just do this as one motion if that's the case, if it doesn't need 5 votes to pass. Unless there was anyone besides me and Gary who are about to abstain. All right. So no comments on either of these meeting records? Would someone like to make a motion?
Madam Chair, I can make a motion to approve meeting records for July 5th and July 19th, 2022.
Thank you, Graham. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Larry. All right, then I will call for the vote. Graham.
Aye.
Gary.
Abstain.
Larry.
Aye.
Erica.
Aye.
Anne.
Aye.
And Kelly abstain. All right, so we have 4 votes to pass the meeting records and 2 abstentions, Gary and myself, since we each missed one of those meetings. So the motion passes and the records are approved. All right, So at the beginning of every Landmark Preservation Commission meeting, we do set aside some time for public comments. This is for no single project on our agenda today under review, but just for general preservation matters. So if there's anyone on the line who would like to make a comment, please dial *9 if you're joining us by phone, or use the hand raise button at the bottom of Zoom if you're joining us by computer.
So it looks like we have one hand raised, Ryan Rose. Ryan, you had your hand up earlier, and I'm wondering if you'd like to speak. So you're welcome to unmute. You just have to press the button at the bottom of your screen now. That's the mute button if you would like to speak. Otherwise, welcome to raise your or to lower your hand.
And if you would like to make a comment, please start with your name and address for the record. You have up to 2 minutes.
Sorry, that was, I hit the wrong button. I apologize.
I kind of figured so. All good.
It happens. All right, the case with virtual meetings, right? All right, if there are no comments, then we'll go ahead and move on into the consent agenda items. So we did have 4 projects on consent agenda today. So we won't be going through what these projects were unless anyone feels that it needs to be pulled off consent. So what did the commissioners think? Any comments or questions for staff? I guess not comments, but questions for staff. And if not, would you like to make a motion?
Madam Chair, I can make the motion.
Thanks,
I move to approve the consent agenda items, specifically project 2022-TAXC-3 for 760 Clayton Street, 2022-TAXC-6 for 1899 York Street, 2022-TAXC-7 for 2217 Grove Street, and project 2022 COA-325 for 332 Vine Street.
Thanks, Erica. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Graham. If there's no further comments on the motion, then I'll call for the vote. Graham,
Aye.
Gary,
Aye.
Larry,
Aye.
Erica,
Aye.
Anne,
Aye.
and Kelly. Aye. All right, so unanimous vote and the motion passes. So if anyone is on the line joining us to, because you have a project on consent, your project has been approved, and feel free to hop off the call if you'd like. We'll move into our design review projects next. So the process is up on the screen here. I'll go ahead and announce the item up for review. Staff will introduce the project and provide their recommendation. Then we'll hear from the applicant. The applicant will have up to 10 minutes to present. Use as much or as little as you need. And then we'll open it up for public comments. When we've heard all of our public comments, we'll move into deliberation and vote. So the first project up for design review today is project number 2022-COA-323 at 1358 High Street.
Okay. Hello, so this is 1358 High Street. You can see that the historic residence on the property is a 4-square. The applicant is proposing to partially demolish the existing rear 2-story addition that you can see there at the rear and the side, and incorporate it into a new larger addition, be 936 square feet, along with also constructing a new rear deck and making alterations to the historic garage, which you see there on the alley on the lower right. So demolition of the existing rear addition and alterations to the garage were started without landmark review or a building permit. So you can see here photos of the work that's been done so far prior to the issuance of a stop work order on May 31st, 2022. After that, the applicant has been working with us and has been working closely with staff to get a project and addition approved, meeting our guidelines. So here you see a site plan. So the existing residence in the front, then the placement of the new 2-story addition, as well as then kind of a deck that encircles it. And then you see that garage at the rear. So the addition and the deck are irregular in plan, designed to avoid impact to 2 existing trees, which are located there, which you see indicated. Their kind of circumference is indicated there on the plans. Decks will be located on both the first and second floors of the addition, as well as then there will also be some inset planters there that you can see here that are located on the 2nd story of the deck. At the garage, a new garage door facing the alley will be added. So currently the garage is just accessed from this side driveway. So with the demolition of the kind of rear alley wall and installation of a new door, will create basically a pull-through garage that could be accessed from either the side driveway or from the alley. So this just shows the rear addition, the portions of the existing rear addition that are proposed for demolition. And here is the new proposed addition. So this is the rear view. So the addition will be located entirely to the rear of the existing residence and will be clearly distinguished from the historic residence. So the applicant is proposing to clad the addition in half-round cedar shingles. While this cladding material is more typically limited to small areas such as dormers, it is a traditional building material and it is found in the district, as well as on this property where it is used for the dormers at 1358 High Street. The applicant is also then proposing to continue the cornice design and brackets from the primary historic residence onto the addition as well, which you can see here. So the windows and doors will be aluminum clad wood. The addition features a variety of door and window types. Doors will include a folding door system as well as double and single full light doors. Awning, double hung and casement windows will be reused. One of those is being reused from the historic residence. While there's a large variety of types of windows, most of these are not going to be highly visible, particularly the contemporary folding door system, since it just faces onto the backyard. It's not going to have any public visibility. So here you see the north side of the addition. This is going to be the most visible side of the addition due to its location immediately adjacent to the parking lot for a multifamily building. It's going to make this side more visible. While there is a large amount of glazing proposed for the other sides, the south and the east, the north wall is going to be primarily blank. While additional windows would more closely follow historic patterns, staff also understands the desire to reduce the glazing on this side due to the proximity with the adjacent parking lot. As you can also see in this image, the addition will feature a very low slope roof with just a 2% slope. While flat roofed additions are generally considered inappropriate for buildings with pitched roofs, staff found in this case the low slope roof helps to reduce the addition's visibility and impact on the original structure, keeping the addition subordinate to the original structure. So here is the south side of the addition. So you can see there kind of the irregular configuration of the addition, the kind of 2-story decks there, those planters, and a metal railing on that upper level deck. And then the way the deck is cut out there to allow kind of for trees for the deck to kind of be built around the trees. So here are alterations to the garage at the rear. So as I said, the one wall facing the alley will be primarily demolished in order to allow for a new garage door there. There's also going to be a new gate at the rear. The chimney is proposed to be removed, and an existing door is going to be replaced, and that door opening enlarged. So overall, staff find the addition as proposed to be compatible. It's primarily in the rear, subordinate, using traditional materials. The one real concern that staff has is with the cornice at the addition. Staff find that the replication of the ornate cornice of the original structure at the addition does not meet guideline 3.9b. That guideline states design in addition is a simplified version of the architectural style of the original structure or in a compatible contemporary style. Staff feels that trying to exactly replicate that cornice makes the addition more complex and is overly replicative of the original structure. Staff would recommend that the brackets be removed and the cornice of the addition be simplified. Staff does not find the use of an ornate cornice to be appropriate on a rear addition and finds that having that really ornate cornice in combination with the shingle clad wall material creates an overly busy combination of materials. So staff is recommending approval with the condition that the cornice design be simplified and the brackets be removed.
Thank you, Abby. Are there any questions for staff? Gary?
I have a question regarding the garage. By putting full width door on the alley, the lateral restraint for that building is considerably reduced. And if the building department, when they review these plans, decides that a smaller opening would be necessary so that there's enough shear wall capacity, that would require them to come back to this commission. Is that correct?
Well, they would have to come back to Landmark. They wouldn't necessarily have to come back to the commission. They would come back to staff. Staff would review it if, any changes that the building department made. If we found that they met the guidelines and we could work with them, we try to work with them administratively, but otherwise, if that wasn't possible, then it would come back to the commission.
Okay, thank you.
Good question. Anybody else? No? All right. Looks like we've already promoted the applicants. So welcome. You can unmute yourself when you're ready. You have up to 10 minutes. And for anyone who's going to discuss during that time, just please introduce yourself by name and address. Thanks.
I'm sorry, I'm just changing the screen because the timer's on mine and not on Brittany's.
I have a timer up, Jen.
Oh, fantastic. Then you're welcome to share it.
Is it not sharing on the PowerPoint?
I took it off. No, I took it off of, I changed to mine.
Oh, okay.
So sorry.
One
Sorry,
second.
everyone.
Okay, can everyone hear me okay?
Yeah, just hold on a second until we get the PowerPoint all set.
Do you see the timer?
We don't see your screen yet.
Uh-oh.
I made you stop sharing because I took over.
Sorry, I thought I had reshared it. Okay.
There it goes. Yep, you're good.
Okay.
Hi,
I'm starting.
Okay, my name is Mitchell Carson. I'm in New York City at the moment at 248 McKibben Street, Brooklyn, New York, 11206. And I'm the architect on the project. My client is actually my mother, Martha Byers, who may or may not be on the call. Well, she's on the call. I don't know if you can see her. So it is her home, as well as her partner, Patrick, who is on the call. And it's also the home in which me and my 3 siblings grew up in, beginning in 2001. It's kind of a dream come true to have been given the opportunity to work on the house that I'm deeply connected to, but also just very fond of. And the stakes are clearly very high for me, as I want to honor the existing house while improving upon it and giving my family dedicated space for gathering and living. And I just want to make them proud. So thank you, Abigail, for your introduction and your recommendations today, and just guidance over the last several months. I just wanted to take a few minutes on behalf of my mother and my family to share some of our design challenges and intentions with you before your deliberation. So while we love our Denver Square, the neighborhood, its history, and even the quirks, it is not necessarily accommodating of a modern lifestyle. And with a family of 6 and growing, there's little space at the moment for gathering. And with small south-facing windows, the existing rooms do not get much natural light. So while providing new well-lit gathering space in the form of a family room on the first floor, there were 2 main architectural goals for the project that we set out with at the very beginning. And they were to protect these 2 large ash trees in the backyard, which they provide a beautiful shady canopy, offering us privacy, the sheer beauty of them, and then simply to protect what is living and thriving on our property, which includes 2, at the moment, 2 talkative red-tailed hawks that my mom keeps telling me about. And then the second goal was just to not compromise the beauty and integrity of the original house. And we hope our design, or you can see that it's very considerate in how it aims to achieve those goals. And the staff, we're happy to see that the staff agrees for the most part. So in short, rather than removing walls and creating new openings on the existing house, we really just wanted to sort of tack our addition onto the back with very minimal disruption of the historical structure. That was just very important to us. And Abigail, I don't know if do you have the concept slide, or this presentation is all we have access to, is that right? Okay, so I can just explain briefly, like conceptually what was going on is because the staff has talked about the complexity of the design with the shifts in the wall plane. And basically what I will say is that in order to provide the amount of space needed for my family and to protect those trees that we love, our design is sort of the simplest version in a lot of ways when we consider the intricacy of the root system. And we've gone through really great lengths by speaking to multiple engineers and arborists about finding a construction method that would reduce the trauma inflicted on the root system and really ensure the tree's survival. So even through the construction process, we're planning on having an arborist and engineer on site. And basically the design is quite literally a result of the analysis of the root system that we've already done and the distances our new construction needs to be in order to not harm them. And the way that we, where these jogs or shifts in the wall plane occur, they align with and are sort of drawn out from aspects of the existing house. They weren't just like a willy-nilly kind of decision. So on the left-hand side in this image, on the renderings that you see, that the depth of that shift aligns with one of the windows on the interior, which is becoming a threshold, a walkable threshold in this new design. And then on the right-hand side, it aligns with where the brick of the existing house sort of stops on the exterior. So you can see it in our application materials as well on the concept sheet. There's some construction lines that kind of explain that. And then on the upper, from the elevation perspective, the way the upper story railing is interrupted by the parapet walls on both ends of the addition. That's where we've placed planters, and the planters are basically reflective of the pre-existing deck that you can see in the images. There are planters built in, and we love the planters, and every summer my mom fills them with white petunias, and we wanted to incorporate these built-in planters into the new addition. So my mother could continue this kind of tradition and give the upper deck more sort of natural life and feel. So it was kind of a way of keeping the existing deck by rebuilding it in a sense on the second floor. And I should note that the height of the planters as well align with the sills of the existing upper story windows. And we feel in a way that the inclusion of the planters actually provides further visual connection to the existing historical design. And then the roof as well, I should say the low slope was really, it felt necessary in order to keep the existing dormer on that third floor, which just so happens to be my bedroom. So I think the last thing I'd like to say is, as far as the visibility of that north wall, which the staff considers public facing, it's true that it's readily visible to the 8-story neighboring apartment building, but the addition is 100 feet back from the primary street, and there's a tree that sort of stands between that sidewalk and our home that allows for a certain amount of privacy. You kind of have to peer around it to get a view of the back, and we're grateful for the tree for that reason. And basically, I know you guys aren't necessarily concerned with the interior of the house, but we did put all of our necessary storage and closets, say, on those north walls, allowing us to kind of maximize our windows on the south and east, where we're going to get much more light, which was, what we wanted all along. And we do want the privacy to the north, because having 8 stories of balconies, while it allows us to interact with neighbors who many of them we love dearly, it can be very exposing. So I think that's everything on my end. Thank you guys so much for your time and for the staff's help along the way. We actually feel that Abigail's early feedback allowed us to take the time to improve upon our design. And we're very excited about realizing this 20-year architectural dream, which has become a kind of beautiful collaboration with the city of Denver. And unless my mother or Patrick would like to speak, I'm happy to answer any of your questions now.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
I'm Martha Byers, owner of the home 1358 High Street. Hi. The only thing I would add is that I'm happy to your recommendation of getting rid of the cornices. Mitch and I have discussed it at length, and I'm perfectly happy to see them go away, because we added them actually thinking we needed something to tie it into the historic home. I agree. I don't think they actually worked there, and Mitch doesn't either. So I'm happy to see those go away. So that's all I have to add. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Okay, are there any questions for the applicants? Anne, yeah.
Question, and maybe I just missed it in the documents, but our guideline 3.3A calls for the new addition to be offset by 4 inches on both sides. And it's just a little hard to tell, especially from the renderings, whether, can you just confirm the offset?
There currently, I don't believe there is an offset. Right now we have the new material, the shingles, just abutting that brick wall. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, Erica.
I also just wanted to confirm something. It looks like the chimney on the garage is being removed because of its placement where you would like to have the second garage door opening at the alley. Is that correct?
Yeah, that is correct.
Thank you.
Thanks. All right, any other questions? No? Thank you for your time. All right, are there any public comments on this project? Please use the hand raise button at the bottom of Zoom at this time if you do.
I don't see any hands raised. And by the way, we don't have anyone on the telephone.
Okay, I was just gonna ask.
Yeah.
Okay, great. All right, well, if we don't have any public comments, Abby, is there any recap there? Did you have any thoughts on that? The walls not showing an offset from the new addition walls?
Yeah,
Showing-
sure. So I was gonna say on one side, it's because they're partially reusing the existing addition and that, so we felt, that made sense where possible to reuse that and they're just keeping that same alignment. On the other side, we weren't as concerned because it is, offset at the top. So we think mainly that addition is to make sure that it's really clear the distinction between the addition, and because on the other side, it, is offset at the second story, we felt it wasn't as essential, that it also needed to be offset at the first, since we felt, overall the design made it really clear that it was an addition. And also the, really clear change in materials.
Mhm. Okay, thanks. All right, let's move into deliberation. So how did everyone feel this met the guidelines?
Kelly, I'll jump in maybe with the easy one here. It sounds like the applicants and staff, feel the same about the eave detail with the brackets, and I agree as well. I think that was, I agree with the staff report in general, but I agree with that particular detail, and think that simplifying will better help it to meet the guidelines from that perspective. So.
I agree with you, Graham, and maybe we should pause here and see if everyone feels that way to remove the brackets so that it's not replicative. Okay. Just wanted to make sure. I thought I saw a reaction on somebody, but I was wrong. Did you have any other thoughts, Graham?
I'm glad to hear Erica asking questions about the garage, just because I know the garages are always a good point of a conversation here, and it's a unique setup with the door switching sides. But no, I think in general, I appreciate the thorough analysis in the staff report and feel like it meets those guidelines well.
Thanks, Graham. Erica, would you like to chime in on that garage?
Yeah. So, as you all tend to know, I do want to make sure we're being careful with our garages and not just willy-nilly letting them go. But of course, this is actually being preserved and is just kind of being rehabbed or modified to accommodate a slightly different, not use, but accommodate a new door. And certainly a chimney is a little more unusual for a garage. And so I was interested to see if it was possible, if it was needed to actually remove it. But I don't have I don't take issue with it being removed for the purpose of the door. I guess I would just say that, I don't know how it aligns with the opening. If for some reason there is, an issue with the size of the opening that Gary raised at the beginning, and that means they need to look at a new size, a smaller size. If it means the possibility of keeping the chimney, I would encourage that. But again, I don't think it's necessary as far as the guidelines go. And I'm sure Anne would like to maybe talk about the inset, but I would just add that I agree with staff. And in this case, I think the purpose of that inset, at least as it's presented in the guidelines, is really to help differentiate an addition. Obviously, that small amount of space doesn't actually make it smaller or less visible per se. And I think in this case, it's very clear that this is an addition that is subordinate to and respects the style of the original house. So I don't take issue with the lack of inset. And of course, acknowledging that they're using an existing addition with that existing wall plane as well.
Thanks, Erica. Anne, do you want to chime in since you had asked that question about the inset?
I agree with what Erica and also what the staff says about the offset. I guess my two comments are, first of all, it just seems like it's a detailing problem. And when you see it in the drawing, so that's actually, I understand, not part of our purview, but that part of it concerns me a little bit. And also just, I have to say, the guideline does say a 4-inch offset. And so anytime the guideline is that specific and we see something that doesn't meet that guideline, I think that we need to be clear that it's a particular case.
I agree. I'm glad you pointed that out, that this is a unique circumstance and that they're meeting that intent in another fashion. Larry?
Yeah, I think to build on that a little bit, I think one of the concerns that might come up is if that new shingle finish ends up being proud of the brick, that seems like that's a really major detail problem. And I don't know if it's possible for us to put into the conditions that the shingles be either flush or inset to whatever degree possible from the brick, even if that requires maybe making a little kind of metal sill at the foundation or something, some other way of dealing with that. Seems like it would be a good thing to stipulate if we can.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that brings up an interesting point. So if that's a question I have for staff, I guess. If the drawings show that the wall planes are flush, do we need a condition or is this discussion enough?
So I think the discussion is sufficient largely because the guideline is that there be an offset, not necessarily an inset. So it could be out, it could be in, it just needs to be differentiated. So you guys have approved it being out a little bit before.
But I would say it sounds like in this case, you don't want it to project out. So I think that it might be helpful just to ask for an additional detail that we have in the stamp drawing so that they're there for the inspector if you want to make sure that the shingle does not project at all beyond the brick. I think just having another quick little detail that shows that in the plans would be helpful so that the inspector has that when they're doing their inspection.
Yeah, I could go either way. I mean, I agree. I kind of feel like it's more of a friendly comment, but I agree that would be a much better detail to have the shingles align or inset versus outward, because then you're having to clad the projection. So Larry, what do you think? Would you recommend a condition on that?
I think it could be a friendly comment, considering the level of care that is going into this, and I think the applicant understands.
Thanks. All good comments. So it sounds like overall we all feel that this is subordinate and compatible to the primary residence. And are there any other feedback, or are we ready to make a motion? All right, who's going to do it?
Madam Chair, I will make a motion.
Thanks, Graham.
You bet. I move to conditionally approve application number 2022-COA-323 for the addition and garage alterations at 1358 High Street as per design guidelines 2.38, 3.2, 3.3, 3.6, 3.7, 3.9, character defining features for the Wyman Historic District, presented testimony, submitted documentation, and information provided in the staff report with the following condition to simplify the cornice design and remove brackets, plural.
Thanks, Graham.
I'll second.
Great, thank you, Erica. All right, if there's no further discussion, I will call for the vote. Graham.
I have to say for the record, I'm not used to being first, but I.
I know, we're missing all the front end of the alphabet.
Exactly, alphabetically, it's throwing me off today, but my vote is aye.
Gary,
Aye.
Larry,
Aye.
Erica,
Aye.
Anne,
Aye.
and Kelly, aye. All right, so we have a unanimous vote and the motion passes, so the project is conditionally approved. Congratulations and good luck on your upcoming addition. All right, the next project we have is 2022-COA-319 at 217 Akoma Street. Brittany, go ahead.
So our next project is for phase 2 design details for a infill project at 217 Akoma Street. This was previously addressed 225 Akoma Street, but the project site is a vacant lot, which you can see in this aerial image here and a street view image of the structure or of the lot as well. So the proposal is for a 5-unit row home with detached garage structure, which you can see in the site plan here. It will face onto West 2nd Avenue and not Akoma Street, which staff feel is appropriate because the majority of the structures along this block of the Baker Historic District do front onto the numbered street and not the named street. And historically, there was a duplex development that fronted onto West 2nd Avenue. In terms of the project proposal and the design details, it will have concrete walkways to each unit from the sidewalk, just some simple yard landscaping. And then each unit will have a 6-foot wood fence separating each of the rear yards from each other. So the landscaping and site work is relatively simple. Mechanical will be located on the rooftop unit, which I have an image of a typical rooftop plan here. So that will not be visible from the public right of way. In terms of the primary structure, it will be clad in a red brick, and then the projecting oriel bays will be clad in a genuine 3-coat stucco, with the upper story penthouse also coated in a stucco as well. The red brick is the ballpark red, which is a typical color that you see for infill construction and is compatible with the surrounding historic context. The doors will be half-light doors with 2 panels below, and then will be covered with a projecting wood canopy that projects 3 feet over the opening to provide some coverage for that entry. We'll have a wood railing detail, and you can see a detail of that railing here on this page. And then all the light fixtures on this side of the building will be downlights located adjacent to either the front door or the penthouse door, but lighting is kept very simple on this facade. In terms of the secondary facades, it will have soldier courses that project forward of the row lock brick, as you can see in this detail here, and it will have a soldier course defining the 2nd floor and then a soldier course defining the building parapet as well. Venting will be located on this elevation. On these secondary elevations, one does front onto Akoma Street, which is the image you see on top of the screen, and then one is the interior lot image. There is a little bit more articulation on the Akoma Street frontage to provide visual relief to that facade. That brick banding detail that is replicative of a kind of window opening continues onto the Akoma Street facade on the primary structure and garage, but you don't see that on the interior lot facade. Staff would like to note we do have some concerns about the fixtures that are proposed on these elevations. So A total of 6 fixtures are proposed on these elevations combined, 4 on the Akoma Street for the primary structure and the interior lot, and then 1 fixture on the Akoma Street and interior lot facade for the garage as well. So staff are recommending that these light fixtures be removed from the submittal as they're not near an entry, and lighting is recommended to be kept minimal. I'm not exactly sure what happened to my submittal. I noticed that today when I was putting together the PowerPoint, but all the material notes are missing. So that is something that will need to be corrected. It was there originally and all the materials were clearly called out, but something happened with my submittal and it's not showing those materials anymore. So I think that's just a mistake that happened on my end with downloading this file. Here is the rear elevation of this structure. At the ground floor. Again, each unit will be separated with a fence, but again, that bottom floor is recessed in and the upper floor is cantilevered out. That is camouflaged with a brick wall, so that's not visible from Akoma Street. And then you will have sliding doors that allow access onto that rear yard space. Typically, we don't allow sliding doors within our historic districts. However, for new construction where they have limited visibility, the commission has allowed those in the past, so staff do not have concerns over the sliding doors on this elevation. What we do have concerns over though is sliding window operations that are on this elevation that are used for casements. So anytime you see a double light window, that is actually a sliding egress window. So staff are recommending that be revised to a casement window as that is a more typical operation for this historic district. Additionally, this project will need a administrative adjustment for encroachment into the upper story setback. So on this elevation, you can see the bulk plane lines clearly drawn. The upper floor penthouse does encroach into the upper story setback. Staff feel that this encroachment is appropriate because the previous design involved a gable form for that penthouse structure, which was not typical of the surrounding context. So the applicant did work with staff to revise the design of the penthouse structure to do this flat roof structure instead of a gable penthouse structure. And this is not atypical of upper floor penthouse structures that you see in the Baker Historic District. So we do feel that that administrative adjustment for encroachment is appropriate. This will have a different light fixture style. It will not be visible from the public right of way. And then that's just located at the ground floor. Everything else you see is just venting. Here is the garage structure. It will be clad in that same red brick and have a soldier course at the building parapet. It will have a wood carriage house style door that you see in the drawings. However, there is a little bit of some conflicting information in their materials submittal. As you can see on the screen, the garage door that was submitted in the window and door specs is a little different in design. So we would like to see that cleaned up as well. So again, the structure is to be clad in red brick with the projecting oriel bays, a genuine 3-coat smooth finish stucco. Most of the trim details are wood on the structure, as well as the windows, which are casement windows. Typically, we do see double hung windows within this district. However, staff felt that the casement windows were appropriate in this configuration as they are modern and of their own time, and the proportions are typical of what you see within the Baker Historic District, particularly as some of the details on the structure are a little more replicative. For instance, the cornice you can see here is a highly decorative cornice. So we do think that the windows, even though they're not the traditional double hung or single hung windows that we see, are more appropriate for the structure as a casement window. Here are just some additional details of that building. The projecting bay will need an exemption from the building code, but that's not typically something the Landmark Preservation Commission reviews. So the building code requires a bay window to actually be separated. We do find that this form is appropriate for this district and typical of the surrounding context as we reviewed in the first submittal, but that's not something typically the commission weighs in on. So here are just some details of this project proposal. The windows are inset from the wall plane on the brick detailing portion of the building. We are requesting that the windows also be inset on the stucco portion as they're not currently shown inset, and we do have some concerns over that. Here you have the brick parapet detail and then the soldier course detail that will project minimally from the row lock adjacent to it, and then the header course detail that will be used on the front facade of the building and the Akoma Street side of the building to provide some visual articulation to the wall plane and break up some of that solid to void relationship. So generally speaking, staff are recommending conditional approval of this project with the condition that egress windows be a casement style window. All windows be inset 2 inches into the wall plane, and that the light fixtures on the east and west elevations be eliminated. And then just because I'm not clear on what happened with my material notes on my submittal, I would add the condition that all material notes be reincorporated into the submittal.
Great, thanks, Brittany. Any questions for staff? Yeah, Larry, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just wondering if the cornice at the penthouse level was something that staff had requested, or
they incorporated that in the so they came to the phase 2 times before the commission. They had a simpler design before, but the commission wanted to see additional articulation to the penthouse level. So part of that articulation was insetting the door on that facade and also adding a cornice detail to that element.
Thank you.
Thanks. Anne, did you have a question?
I do have a question, Brittany. With respect to guideline 4.8, can you just comment a little bit on the design of the front door?
I mean, I don't have comments on the design of the front door. Personally, I will say when staff discussed this project, there was some discussion about maybe the doors too replicative of what you see in the surrounding context. So I think that'd be a great discussion for the commission to have.
Thank you.
Thanks. And I also couldn't find some of these material tags and stuff, so there must have just been some glitch in the PDF.
And I apologize for that. I didn't notice until I was putting together the PowerPoint this morning.
No worries. Mine, I don't know if it's consistent with everyone else's, probably if multiple people are having this issue, but mine are just on sheets 15 and 16 primarily. And there's part of the title block missing. Like, for instance, I don't know it's sheet number 15 and 16. I only know that because I can see it on 14 and 17, so can deduce, but just so the applicant knows, those are at least a couple of the sheets to double check. All right, so do we have the applicant promoted? It looks like we might. So you can go ahead and unmute when you're ready to present. You have up to 10 minutes. Please start with your name and address for the record.
Hi, my name is Alexis Trick. I'm at 1335 South Inca Street, Denver 80223. So first, I would like to apologize if there was a kind of mess up on the PDF. We ran through the set that we sent over and everything looks normal on our end. So maybe it's just us trying to figure out how it got, I guess, messed up in the middle. But the other thing that I want to, I guess, clear up that Brittany had mentioned was the discussion on the garage doors. So it came to our attention that it would probably be better to give the actual, I guess, like specification on what that garage door should be. And so we put that in the submittal so that you would know or see in actuality what that would look like, and getting a computer generated model to match it exactly was a little difficult. So the idea that what we specified in the package would be correct rather than kind of the computer generated model. The other thing, addressing the concerns that Brittany has brought up, is that we're definitely willing to commit to insetting the windows everywhere else, similar to how they were inset as the brick, as well as removing the light fixtures on the sides of the buildings. We have no problem removing those. The other one being the casement adjustment to the windows rather than the sliders on the rear side, which were originally proposed. We're okay similarly committing to making that change. No problem on our end. And I guess the question that I would pose back to you for conversation's sake would be, one of the things that we had discussed in phase 1 was making sure all of the windows were proportional, being like the 2 foot wide by 5 foot tall. So for terms of egress and like passing building code, they would have to be 2 foot and 6 inches wide and 5 foot tall, which would change a little bit of the proportion of the building. So if that is okay with you guys as well, we're totally okay with making that adjustment. If you're okay with the proportions being skewed just a little bit. And I guess lastly, regarding the front door, which seemed to be a question, we did want it to, what we found typical throughout Baker was having the half-light doors. So that was kind of the intent behind the front door being just the top part glass, as well as just a general concern for privacy. But that, coupled with it being consistent throughout Baker, that was kind of the motivation for choosing that direction of door. But are also open if, you know, maybe a cleaner, just simplified version of the door is more of the direction, we're okay with that as well.
All right. Sorry, did you have anything else, Alexis?
That'll be it. Thank you.
All right. Are there any questions for the applicant? I have a couple. So you mentioned the proportions of the windows would need to change a little bit to meet egress window requirements. And so my question there is, I know the comment about changing to a casement style was made for egress windows only. So are you referencing that all windows would change to 2 foot 6 wide by 5 feet, or can you just clarify?
Sure. No, I was referencing specifically just the ones that are depicted as casement.
Okay.
The rest would change or would stay as the 2 foot by 5 foot.
Okay. Gotcha. And to refresh my memory, sorry, I'm trying to remember which ones would that be? Are they only on, because I know the sliders were on the rear facade. Are there any on the front?
No, so those are also all on the rear.
Okay. Gotcha. Thank you. And then my last question is, I believe the brick, based on the image that you've got in the submittal package, it looks like it's a smooth kind of face brick. Is that right? I asked because in the renderings it looked a bit tumbled, and I was wondering if the intent was for it to be smooth or tumbled and kind of rustic.
No, the intent is more of the smooth.
Great, thanks. Any other questions for the applicant? Yeah, Larry.
Yeah, I guess on the topic of egress windows, now that since you brought it up, um, is an egress window not required for the primary bedroom on the second floor that faces the street? Because that appears to have fixed windows only.
We are looking. Give us 1 second.
Yeah, I see where you're going with this, Larry. I think
Yeah,
you're
does that
right.
have a kind of knock-on effect as
Yeah.
well? And
Yeah, we see what you're like referencing to. That is definitely a mistake on our part.
So you will need an egress window in that front bedroom, right?
Correct, yes.
Okay. Thanks. Sorry, Larry, did I cut you off? Anything else?
oh no, that was it. I think we'll just have to discuss in deliberation.
Yeah. Great. Any other questions for the applicant? No? All right, thanks for your time. Are there any public comments on this project? Please use the hand raise button at this time if you do.
Trying to find my unmute. No, I don't see any hands raised.
All right. Then let's go ahead and move into, oh, sorry, Brittany, yes. Follow up.
I do have some follow-up. So the commission did significantly discuss proportions of the windows be similar, particularly on the Akoma Street facade. We did also recommend it for the rear elevation. However, the commission does have flexibility for slightly different proportions on facades that aren't as visible from the public right away. So that may be something to consider during your discussion. And I think that's the only follow-up I have.
Great, thanks. All right, let's move into deliberation. So I'm wondering if maybe we start with the egress windows, since that sounds like a big conversation to be had, rather than just opening it up for free for all. So yeah, let's discuss that. So especially because it seems like what's proposed in our packet today may not work at the front facade. They mentioned that, you know, all these windows are 2 foot by 5 foot. They need to be 2 foot 6 inches wide instead to meet egress window requirements. What does everybody think about the proportions we're discussing, and whether, you know, all windows should be changed if that's necessary, or just egress windows? Yeah, Gary.
Well, to answer part of that question, I don't know that the windows in those bays, the proportions of those windows need to match the windows on the side elevation, but I am wondering how the egress windows will be put into those bays, because they're only, the bay is 5 foot 9 inches wide,
Mhm.
and two 2 foot 6 windows. If it's a pair, is it going to fit?
Mhm.
Unless the bay gets bigger.
Yeah.
Or it's a single window, and that's a pretty serious design change to how the bays are presented right now. And I don't have a solution. I'm just saying it's a problem to resolve.
Yeah, I agree with you, Gary. I feel like the bays would need to get bigger, and I guess what I'm struggling with is they've got to have an egress window. This is infill. This isn't a historic condition or anything. They need to design it to meet code. So I think they're going to have to make the change. And I guess what I'm struggling is what's our path to helping them with this? Is this something that can be done on a conditional basis, or is it going to have such ramifications that a continuance would make more sense, or, that's what I'm struggling with.
Kelly, I think in addition to Gary's comment too, looking at guideline 4.8 that talks about windows and doors and features compatible with, historic context. Not only does it feel like if they're both wider, they may not fit, but I think if we had something asymmetrical going on, especially on the front facade, that's problematic from a context perspective, in spite of the challenge, like you said, that egress has to happen. So, for that reason, I don't know if that could be a condition, or Brittany, if you're comfortable with that as a condition, sort of as a design review component. But I thought I'd throw a brief comment there.
So conditions only come back to me for review, and it's not just me, it could be the collective staff. But I feel like based on Gary's comments, that's probably a bigger mass forming context issue.
Yeah, but I do agree, Graham, that the symmetry or the proportions need to be equal on all those front windows. And Gary, I agree with you that I'm not sure all the windows around the building need to, but definitely those windows in the front to make that rhythm work and it fit with the context of the district. Yeah, Larry.
Yeah, so just to put this out there, I think we're all thinking that these would become casements on the front, but they could be double hungs, and maybe that might work within the egress size requirements, which is 20 inches wide and 24 inches tall. And the issue with casements is that when they're swung open, the window is kind of inboard of the jamb, and so it narrows the clear opening, whereas double hungs don't have as much of an issue with that. So just as a friendly comment to the applicant, that might be a resolution without changing the proportion of the windows.
That's a great comment.
So the windows in the bays are casements right now.
Yeah, but he's just giving a friendly comment to the applicant that if they, having all of those casements, but then increasing the width by 6 inches is going to have so many impacts on the front. So if they'd rather keep the opening size and go to a double.
Yeah, I was just trying to provide clarity that they are casements and not fixed.
Okay, gotcha. I see. Thank you.
I suggest, I don't know if we do it as a denial or a continuance, but I think either have the architect decide how they're going to resolve the issue and bring the resolution back to the commission for review.
I agree. Erica, it looked like you had something to say as well. Is that?
Gary summed it up. I just don't feel comfortable. I think Larry's suggestion was a good one that they could use, but they need to make that decision, and we don't. There's too many ramifications that we can't decide today.
Is there anything else that we think we should comment on, since we've only talked about windows? If this is going to come back to us, are there any other discussions that we need to have to provide some input to the applicant? Yeah, Erica.
Well, and maybe if they go the route of double hung, this becomes less of an issue, but the issue of the front door, I think it as it is today, just looking at the design itself, the aesthetic seems very mixed and matched. And I also would throw in the garage doors to that as well. I think they're compared to the rest of the windows that we see, the rest of the openings, they just seem rather historic and less clean, whether we're looking at the actual kind of cut sheet or, the actual specified door type or what's in the rendering. I'm just concerned about those as well as being paneled and multi-light compared to these very, clean single light windows. So maybe if they're double hung, at least on the front facade, that becomes less of an issue. I'm not sure, but I think it might be worth them taking another look to see kind of a unified aesthetic, I guess, rather than this mix and match.
Great. And did you have anything else to say about the door?
No, I think Erica said it very well. And also, I look at the compatibility studies and I don't actually see that door configuration. So I know that Brittany said it's throughout the neighborhood, but I agree with Erica. It looks to me like mix and match, and maybe should be reconsidered. Maybe with the double hung, it would be more compatible.
Right. And I assume everything else we're kind of on the same page as the staff report analysis, in setting windows 2 inches in the wall plane, that's our standard, and eliminating the light fixtures on the east and west. All right. So we're talking about either continuance or denial. I feel like it makes sense to do a denial in this case so that they can see how they're going to address this egress issue. Is that accurate? Or Jen, do you think a continuance would apply in this case? I'm a little confused. Normally we do a continuance when we need something else to make a judgment.
Yeah, but if there's some clarification that needs to happen because of something that could go either way or could be redesigned, you guys have done a continuation in that circumstance. So I think it's really up to you all, and maybe I'll look to Brittany for input too, based on the conversation as to whether it sounds like you guys are aiming more in that way.
Yeah, is there a benefit, Brittany, to doing a continuance or a denial in this case? Do you have any?
Let me look at the schedule coming up. Can't answer your question right this second.
You mean the agenda, like how full the
Yeah.
agendas are? Yeah, I can do that because I know you're sharing your screen.
And Nate, were you going to say something? I saw you unmuted.
Yeah, thanks, Madam Chair. I was just going to, agree that this would be a case that the commission could either deny or ask for a continuance. And typically when you ask for a continuance, you're looking for more information to be better informed about the decision you're going to make. So sounds like either direction in this case would be appropriate.
So I think probably a continuance would guarantee them a spot on an upcoming agenda because we are very full.
Yeah.
So do we need to maybe bring the applicant, promote them back so we can ask them when would be a time they could have this information to us?
Emily, I can do that since I'm here. All right. Alexis is moving back over. There she goes. Oh, yep, there we go.
All right, Alexis, if you could unmute yourself when you're ready. Essentially, we're looking at continuing the project so that you can address the egress issues at the front however you'd like. So Brittany, when is the next meeting that she could be present on, and when would you need materials by?
In all honesty, okay. Okay, so for the August 16th meeting, the materials have to be posted next Tuesday in the morning. In theory, I could do that, but I don't know how quickly the applicant can return things to me. So we're probably looking more at the September 6th meeting.
Yeah, because we've already set the agenda for that one too and finalized it.
So Alexis, could you?
Oh yeah, and that's
unmute-
a really full meeting.
It is full, yeah.
Could you unmute and let us know what you're thinking from a timeline perspective?
We can commit to, getting all of the information back over to Brittany by probably latest end of this week, so Friday, end of workday.
Okay. So in that case, Brittany, there'd be a spot in the next meeting for them,
No, it'd still be August 6th because,
or September 6th?
yeah, sorry, because that next meeting is full.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I must have missed that. I thought.
No, I think I confused you. It's on me, Kelly.
Okay, so if it's not till September 6th, then when do you need the materials by?
I need them by August 9th. But by setting it to a date certain, you're guaranteeing them a spot on that agenda because that
Sure.
agenda is already overflowing as well. So
Yeah, we've already bounced, we haven't set that agenda. The filing deadline isn't until August 9th, and we already are moving projects that have come in for that agenda onto the 2nd September meeting.
Okay.
So if you continue this project to September 6th, it will bump other people who've already submitted their materials.
And we can do that. Now I feel kind of bad. Okay. Yeah, Gary.
Are we only doing 2 meetings in August? Okay.
Yes.
Okay, all right. So Alexis, you could meet the filing deadline of August 9th, which would get you on the September 6th meeting?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, all right, thank you. All right, then I think we have what we need to make a motion. So we're going to recommend a continuation so that because there's a few different ways they could address this egress issue at the front that will highly impact the proportions of the design. We'll continue this till the September 6th meeting. Is there?
Correct. And it's not a recommendation of continuation, it is a continuation.
Mhm. Okay. Great. So who would like to make the motion?
I can give it a try.
Great.
I move to continue the project review for application number 2022-COA-319 to the September 6th, 2022 meeting.
I will second.
Thanks, Erica, for the motion and Graham for seconding. All right, I will call for the vote. Graham.
Aye.
Gary.
Aye.
Larry.
Aye.
Erica.
Aye.
Anne.
Aye.
And Kelly. Aye. All right, we have a unanimous vote, so the motion passes and the project is continued. All right, we'll see you back on September 6th. Next project up for review is 2022-COA-320 at 440 Delaware Street.
So our next project is for a pop-top addition, also in the Baker Historic District. This is a contributing structure to the Baker Historic District. It was constructed in 1905, and the period of significance is 1873 to 1937. This is a bit of a unique site in which that is not a typical lot size for Denver. As you can see, there is no alley here on this block, and Delaware and Cherokee Street have structures that back up to each other. And we have a foreshortened lot here that is not a typical condition of the 125-foot lot that you normally see within Denver. So the applicant is proposing a pop-top addition as there is not much of an opportunity for a rear or side addition. This is a classic cottage structure, which you can see here in the image of the structure. So in terms of roof demolition, the demolition is proposed to be less than 40%. Therefore, a public hearing for demolition was not required for this property. The demolition is calculated to be 35.4% of the roof. So it is still a significant amount of demolition, but is below demolition that triggers a public hearing. All demolition will be set back 16 feet from the primary facade to preserve as much of the original roof as possible. Original chimneys on the north side of the structure will remain intact in part of this project, and the original front roof dormer will remain intact. That is indicative of the classic cottage form. So although the demolition is significant, staff feel that it is appropriate in this instance as it will retain many of the character features of this home. So here is the existing west elevation, and here is the proposed elevation. So this pop-top addition has been minimized and significantly redesigned by the applicant numerous times in conjunction with working with staff and the neighborhood to reduce its footprint. So it's not adding any additional height to the existing structure. The proposed addition will tie into the existing ridge line of the structure, and it is not inset from the wall plane, which is typically recommended when we're talking about dormer additions to structures. So therefore, staff are reviewing this as a pop-top addition due to the amount of demolition that is involved in this, and just some complexities in the design of the addition. We didn't feel that it cleanly met the requirements for a dormer addition, but did for a pop-top addition. So here is the side elevation. The addition will preserve the original roof eave and line of the structure. So although it's not inset from the wall plane, staff did feel that it was appropriate addition. Again, that original chimney on the north elevation will be retained, and there will be 2 casement windows on this elevation of the dormer pop-top addition, as well as a skylight. The addition will have a standing seam metal roof. The applicant hasn't provided any documentation indicating that the roof slope requires the standing seam metal roof, and staff do have some concerns over the primary roof being an asphalt shingle, and then just a change in material to the dormer addition roof. However, it probably will not be visible from the public right of way. So I do think this is something for the commission to discuss, as I do think that the slope of this roof does require it to have a standing seam roof and not asphalt shingle. But again, the applicant hasn't provided clear documentation for staff on that element. So on this elevation, the applicant is proposing a fire rated window due to its proximity to the property line. It's shown here as an awning operation. However, in the manufacturer specs, is shown as a slider window. So again, we don't typically allow slider windows within our historic districts. So staff do have some concerns over that window operation as well. The cladding material is proposed to be a fiber cement shingle. It is intended to be a straight edge shingle, although the drawings do show it as a staggered edge, but it is intended to be a straight edge shingle. So that would be a good thing to clarify in the material notes for this project. On the rear of the addition, it will have a gable roof form that will have a balcony access. This is in the rear 35, so it probably will need some type of adjustment from the zoning administrator for second floor deck. However, the applicant hasn't indicated that in their submittal materials, but an administrative adjustment will be needed for this addition in the height and bulk plane. So staff do feel that the height and bulk plane encroachment for the south dormer and the north dormer is appropriate for this project. Again, the applicant has worked really significantly to minimize the design of this addition that can really only be placed on the roof of this structure due to the lot size in this particular house. So we do feel that because of the constraints of the site, that the administrative adjustment for height and bulk plane is warranted here in this case. So we are recommending that the commission recommend approval of that. You can just see a detail of that balcony here. It is intended to have a wood balustrade on the east elevations, and then the dormer on this elevation is intended to be clad in lap siding. Although this is a change in material, it will not be visible from the public right of way, so staff did not have concerns over that change in material. Here are the window manufacturers and specifications and schedule. Staff are requesting that all windows be inset at least 2 inches into the wall plane, as that is what the commission has typically required. The double hung window is shown to be inset 3 inches into the wall plane, but again, this project proposal is showing casement windows in elevation, so there is some lack of clarity in the window type and operation in this project submittal. So we are asking that the window schedule and window manufacturer specifications in relationship to the window operation be clarified in this submittal. And then we are also asking that that fire rated window be of a awning or casement operation. However, the commission has approved this specific window before on projects in the Baker Historic Districts on accessory dwelling units, which are new construction. Again, the commission has typically not allowed slider operation on historic structures. So we are asking for clarity on window specifications as part of this project material. So in general, we do feel that this project is appropriate and has been significantly designed to respect the character of the surrounding historic context and this classic cottage structure. So we are recommending a conditional approval. And the only other condition that we have on this is that the details of the fascia and soffit material be provided, as it will have a 6-inch roof overhang. We are also recommending that the commission recommend an administrative adjustment for height and bulk plane for this project.
Thanks, Brittany. Are there any questions for staff?
I just wanted to clarify, Brittany, that in the staff report, you have 3 conditions, but it sounds like you would recommend adding a 4th condition for the one window that should not be a slider window, or is that, I guess, yeah.
I think that's for commission discussion because you have approved it in certain instances. And I know the applicant has some comments for you on fire rated windows and their operation type.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for staff? Oh, all right. We've got the applicants here. You can go ahead and unmute yourself when you're ready. Please start with your name and address for the record. You have up to 10 minutes. We can't hear you. If you could unmute yourself. There we go.
There we go. Okay, the comments that, okay, the staff instances of indicating the awning window, there aren't any. And if you look at the drawings, I can only refer to the page numbers that I submitted, and these are kind of out of sequence. If we could go back a couple of pages to the window schedule, I could iterate precisely. Here we go. The drawing on the extreme right showing the window section, the setback section of it is purely a framing detail. Okay, it has your 8.5 inch header, 7.5 inch header tripled. You have the setback shown from the interior space at 2 inches, and it's saying, look at the window scheduled. On the right-hand side, it's also dimensioned showing a 3-inch setback from the exterior face of the structure with the trim around the window. The window in the middle is not talked about at all. Item. Going to the left-hand side of the page, it says window schedule, and it's B, C, and D. Window D was a suggestion from the Baker Landmark Committee that we decrease the privacy in the master bedroom suite by placing, instead of having high horizontal windows, to place 2 casements, ideally on the side of the bed, which faces that wall or heads on that wall. The fire rated window below it, C, is clearly a slider. There's no, okay. The Velux skylight is hinged at the top, and it is an awning type skylight, albeit virtually flat on the 212 pitched roof. The next drawing to the right is an elevation section drawing of that fire rated window assembly. In my best researches over the past several years in installing at least 2 of these in the Landmark District, this is the awning window is not available. There are only 2 or 3 manufacturers in the US of fire rated window assemblies, and they're not available in awnings, casements, or double hungs, to my best of my ability. That issues the so that those are the primary issues that seem to be addressed. The roof pitch on the main part of the addition is 2 and 12. Actually, it's 1 7/8 12. But this is within carpenter's accuracy. In my best experience, best practices indicate that you don't put built-up roofing on a flat roof. It inevitably leaks. When leaks start happening, they're not aware, the interior people are not aware of them until damage is done. I don't think the issue is durability more than anything else. And the visibility of this roof structure from anything other than a bird's eye perspective doesn't exist. The back piece could be, I suppose, asphalt shingles, as it's a 6 and 12 pitch, but for continuity of design and continuity of fabrication, it's shown here in this elevation, in this south elevation, to be metal clad roofing, standing seam. Let's see. In the bathroom here, we're looking at with the horizontal slider window 4B indicated, there may be a fixed pane option available, but being this that it's a bathroom, would have an adverse effect on ventilation in a room that's prone to have condensation. And it's already a very short room and a thick roof, and punching holes in a metal roof is more difficult than punching holes in an asphalt roof for mechanical purposes. That's pretty much what I have, all I have to specify. The details, and I don't have a share screen option with you, or do I? I've provided Brittany over the weekend with details of the side sections of the roof overhangs for both the 212 as well as the 412 or 612 roof, the two roof systems, basically indicated by 3B for the fascia and soffit details. That's best I can do at the moment. I can respond to any questions specifically.
All right, thank you. And we didn't get your name and address for the record. Could you state?
Okay, I am Roger Day. I live at 219 South Bannock Street in the Baker neighborhood. I've been a resident of Baker since 1990, and I have been on the landmark and zoning committees of Baker neighborhood since then, actively participating and doing design work and advocacy work in Baker since then.
All right, thank you. Are there any questions for the applicant? No, not many questions. I did just want to confirm, so it sounds like straight edge shingles are proposed, but there is, let me find it again. It's just looking at your renderings. So the renderings on pages 18 and 19 do show them clad in horizontal lap siding. Based on the elevation.
Those are the 3D drawings?
Yes, so those are showing lap siding, and based on the elevations, I'm guessing the lap siding is only intended to be on that back porch. Is that correct?
That would be, that's correct. That's correct. The 3D drawings, the circular navigation of the site was done way long time ago for conceptual reasons.
Okay. And you were talking about the detail for framing only, the window inset detail, which is on page 25 of your submittal.
Correct.
So I guess the concern there, and I know why Brittany had this in as a condition, is, you know, I get if this is just showing a standard, and it does say to refer to the window schedule, but are the dimensions of the double hung shown there the same as the slider? Because if they're not, then are those dimensions to the exterior or interior going to change?
Okay, what the window part that is shown there in that section between the windows, the two horizontal, two dimensions that speak to the window schedule, that is actually a section through the a vertical section through the fire rated window C. It is a horizontal section. It is a horizontal section through that window. Basically, is all the windows in this to achieve this situation need to be designed for 2x4 framing.
Mm-hmm.
In order to fit inside with the setbacks inside. This window indeed is the thickest or widest of the two window types being specified. Is that clear?
Not to me, maybe to others.
Okay.
Did you say it's a horizontal section through window?
Well, okay, if you look, if on the same page, you look at
the middle, okay. Yeah,
A and B, and B. Okay, that it is that window that is placed in there and turn 90 degrees.
Yeah, I just, my question is whether in the window inset detail, the section, vertical section detail, is that dimension reflective of the depth of the slider?
Yes, it is.
It is. So the slider depth is the same depth as the double hung. Okay, thanks. Any other questions for the applicant? No. All right, thank you for your time. Okay, are there any public comments on this project? Please use the hand
Oh,
raise.
I do see hand raised. Yep. Stuart, you're welcome to unmute yourself, and Brittany, if you could reset the timer for, yep, there you go.
Hello, can you hear me? Great.
Yes, we
This
can.
is Stuart Hayden. I'm at 2525 Grape Street, 80207. And I'm a little concerned about the size of the dormers. I'm looking primarily at guideline 2.26 and specifically letter D, setting the dormers back behind the roof eave. That doesn't occur in this case. They're on the same wall plane, and it sort of I think makes them appear pretty large and overwhelms the original roof structure. And then also introducing another kind of roof plane on the, there's a hipped roof dormer on the front, and then adding shed roof on the side and a gable roof on the rear, I think adds a little too much complexity. And also, I didn't see any evidence of shed roof dormers presented. That are elsewhere in the historic district, as H suggests should be the case. So anyway, I would, hope that the commission denies this proposal, and that's it. Thanks.
Thank you. Are there any other comments on this project?
I don't see any other hands raised.
All right. Is there any recap, Brittany?
So we're requiring all windows to be inset at least 2 inches into the wall plane if the vertical section is representative of the horizontal slider and the commission's okay with that. I will also need a vertical section or horizontal section of the casement windows, which I don't currently have. So I would recommend my condition remain as written.
Great, thanks. And Brittany, getting to the public comment that was just made about how the dormers are not inset, I believe you referenced this in your staff report and presentation that you were looking, that's why you were looking at this more as a pop top rather than a dormer.
We did evaluate this with Chapter 3 additions to historic structures. The commission does allow pop-top additions, and this originally came in as a much larger pop-top. As I indicated, I've been working with this applicant and property owner for over a year to do everything we can to minimize this addition. It's a complex one for sure. It definitely doesn't meet the dormer addition guidelines. However, I will say it does retain the original roof eaves, which is really the intent of that inset from the wall plane. The commission has provided flexibility in some instances on that inset. But again, we didn't evaluate it with the Chapter 2 guidelines. We evaluated it with the addition guidelines.
Thank you. All right, Anne, did you have something?
Is Brittany a question, or is that out of order?
No, go ahead.
This just is based on what the applicant said, that there don't, and maybe I'm just really confused. I'm looking at your comment 3.6 in the staff report. And it says no sliders shall be used. All windows shall be casements or double hung. So in the past, is there a casement window that fits this configuration that is an egress window?
So when I was doing research on fire rated windows, I did find casement, awning, and double hung fire rated windows. I can't speak to supply chain issues and how readily available those are. And I do know that this exact window has been approved on 2 ADUs in this district specifically for this applicant.
Thank you. Thank you.
Great question. All right, let's move into deliberation. So how did everyone feel this met the guidelines? And remember, we're looking at it as an addition rather than a dormer. Yeah, Anne.
I guess I'll just speak to the point that the question I just asked Brittany, because I'm looking at the staff report, and it seems to me probably the one that seems the most difficult to meet is the suggestion number 2. Sorry, I'm losing the condition number 2, which is to clarify the window schedule and window manufacturer specifications in relationship to the window operation. And it seems to me, unfortunately, that the applicants seem to think that wasn't possible, but it sounds like that is possible. And so I guess I agree with the staff's report. And if that stands, then it's up to the applicant then just to do the research and find the appropriate window.
Is that a question for me? Or just, okay.
Well, actually, it's not a question for you. I just wanted to make sure that such a thing actually existed, because we don't want to put the applicant in a situation where there's no way of meeting the condition. But if the condition can be met, I guess my point is, I agree with the staff report that condition should be met.
So I'm a little confused on this, because if we're saying no slider windows shall be used, that's not what the condition says. So is that actually what we want to put in the condition? Because the condition is just saying to clarify things because they didn't seem consistent in the drawings. And the staff report was saying no sliders. So to me, those are two different things. So how does everyone feel about a slider window? Maybe let's start there. Is a slider window appropriate? We've approved it on ADUs in this district, not necessarily on primary structures. What are your thoughts here? Larry.
I'll go ahead. Yeah, so I think that it's very different on an ADU versus a primary structure. And I think that seeing as this is going to be, relatively high and possibly visible from the street at certain angles, then I would say stick to the no sliders guideline.
I see a couple nodding heads. Is everybody in agreement on that? Okay. So due to the visibility and that's not a common window type found historically in the district, we wouldn't recommend it. And, then it's kind of up to the applicant to determine how they want to address that comment. And if they can't, they can always reach out to Brittany if there is some supply chain issue that's warranting something else, then that could always be addressed by staff, right? Okay, so I'd propose, if that's the way we're headed, that we maybe reword that condition. If we move towards the suggested motion, that condition number 2 will need to be adjusted to state no slider windows to be used, and update the window schedule and details. Something to that effect. You guys are smart. You can come up with it. So it looks like the applicant has put together some fascia and soffit details that they've sent Brittany, but since they were submitted after the materials have gone out, we don't have those in front of us today, but it sounds like that is not something that cannot be resolved. So that's good. The other recommended condition was the inset, the 2-inch inset of the windows in the wall plane. That's fairly standard. So we did hear from a public member that they had some concerns of the overall size, and that the new kind of dormers didn't match the original roof style of the dormer on the front facade. Did anyone else have concerns about the size or general shape, form?
I'll just speak to that. I appreciate the public comment and looking carefully at the design guidelines, but I think staff's review of this more as a pop-top addition is appropriate given the constraints of the property and the site, and this type of house, which is, its proportions are very unique as far as its sizing goes. So it seems to me that this addition is kind of maybe the best we can get, given all those constraints and providing something that's usable for the owner. So I am in support of the size and the placement of the dormers, as it were. And maybe we can continue talking about this if we need to. I did have one slight comment about the roof material, but I can hold on to that until we're done talking about this.
Go ahead.
Okay. So I shared staff's concerns about the standing seam metal roof. However, assuming that really is needed given the roof slope, and I agree it's likely to not be very visible, if at all. However, I guess it was this image that we see here on the screen of showing the asphalt shingles that would be used elsewhere, that even though it seems unlikely that the metal roof would be visible, I would prefer to have some sort of color matching, or, as closely matching between the two roof materials as possible. So I would like to add that as a condition.
So that's a good, I have a question, I guess, on that. If it's not integral, do we have purview over that?
These are both integral colors, so you do have purview.
They are
over
integral.
the colors here.
Okay, just checking. All right, would everyone else agree with that suggestion that Erica mentioned, Larry?
I just had one kind of comment related to that. I don't know how this might impact people's decisions, but I have been able to use asphalt shingles at a 212 pitch with an appropriate underlayment. Historically, that hasn't always been the case, but more and more manufacturers are offering that opportunity now. So I guess it just brings up the question of whether that's something that we should allow still, because it is, conventionally a very low pitch for asphalt. And then the other thing kind of related to that is the applicant is also showing the steeper pitched roof over the little door patio element, also in metal. There's not really a good argument for that to be in metal, other than just that it would match what it's tying into. So.
Yeah, reducing trades and efficiency in material is probably their intent, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point. What are people's thoughts on that? If there is an option for those shed dormers to be asphalt shingle, does it warrant the metal roofing, I guess?
Kelly, I'll echo what Larry mentioned. And I'm certainly not an architect here in the crowd, but from a field perspective, I feel like that 212 or inch and 7/8, I guess, as the applicant said, has kind of always been that cutoff. And it's the greater than or equal to conversation, I suppose, where the equal to is kind of the crux of where we sit. So I've certainly seen that done before. And, I do think the uniformity is helpful, especially given the small scale and how close together all of these materials are. So I guess I'll agree with Larry's comment. I appreciate that. I'd had the same thought, that it may be a possibility worth investigating without totally ruling out.
All right, thank you. Is this something that we feel is more of a friendly comment or a condition? I won't weigh in because I haven't dealt with that condition before. I don't do much residential.
So the staff report, just from my understanding, is saying that they're recommending approval of that component of it.
Correct. And I think, so Brittany, the reasoning behind that was because your understanding was that they couldn't do a shingle roof on that slope, right?
Correct. And again, I am not an architect whatsoever, so
Yeah.
I don't know those particulars. So that's why these items come before you guys.
Sure, sure. Gary, I see you unmuted. Let's put you in the hot seat this time. What are your thoughts?
Well, I never ask an architect about roofing details, I guess is the
I'm not going to ask you for all the
a
details.
wise thing. But I agree with Larry that with a like a I'm going to use a proprietary name, but I know there's generic materials like a ice and water shield or a bituthane with a plasticized asphaltic underlayment. Putting asphalt shingles on a 212 pitch is acceptable. It may not be what manufacturers recommend, but they've got other things at stake. And I do think that these roofs are clearly doable with a 212 roof pitch with the proper detailing. Standing seam roofs aren't foolproof either, even at low pitches. I mean, you'll see manufacturers recommend that a standing seam roof requires like a 312 pitch or greater. There are some standing seam roofs that have sealant in the seams that are proprietary that can be put at lower pitches. So I think it's, I think going with an asphalt roof is the way to go with the proper underlayment.
Well, you all have convinced me. I mean, I think that if Erica, I agreed with you that at a minimum, the color should kind of be integrated to minimize that the difference of a standing seam roof. But if they could be the same material, I think that's most consistent with the guidelines in matching the historic roof.
If that is going to be one of your conditions, though, you need to have be clear that the historic roof could be standing seam in that situation. If you're saying that the roofs be compatible and similar materials, then
I think we're saying that the new roofs be matching the existing.
yes. So you just need to be very clear about that. Because the way I heard it was that potentially that could mean that the main roof.
I see what you're saying.
Okay.
I'm a little worried that we don't have that. I don't understand the guideline that's backing this up. Because I'm looking at guideline 3.7, which is design the roof of a new addition to be compatible with the original structure and surrounding historic context, but it doesn't say match it. And I suppose you could say 3.10, design a rooftop addition to minimize the impact on the residential structure and context. But I have to say that I agree with Erica, that's pretty high up and pretty hard to see. So I guess I would think that we would say that the color has to match, or so however it's done, that looking at those two, the color has to match. And you can tell from the discussion that it's possible to go from the standing seam, but I'm not sure that either of those two guidelines are strong enough to say you can't use the standing seam, but maybe I'm incorrect.
So I think that's, oh, sorry, Brittany, what were you going to say?
Oh, I would just say that our material guideline is really 4.6. That says use materials that appear similar in scale, color, and texture and finish to those seen historically. And and it's referenced in guideline 3.2D to reference 4.6. So.
Yeah, and I was just going to point out that in the staff report, you didn't have all of 3.7. There is an A and a B to 3.7, and 3.7B says if using contemporary materials, they should be compatible with historic roof materials and visual impact, texture, and relationship to architectural style. So I think it kind of goes with that. It also says, you know, in 3.7A about, you know, using similar to surrounding historic context. That one's not referencing material though, so maybe I shouldn't have brought that up. So I think that there are guidelines that do support using asphalt shingle, if that's the way is that what everyone's leaning towards? Just a nodding head yes, if that's your opinion. Okay. All right, then in our motion, we should reference, sorry, Brittany, was it 4 point, what was it? 4 point?
It's 4.6.
6. Okay, and 3.7B. Great. Okay, so I think we've talked about this project enough, probably. So it sounds like we're coming to a consensus, and just to make sure I understand where we're going, it sounds like we're still okay with the conditional approval based on the fact that everyone's comfortable with the size and everything. It's more about these conditions are standard, you know, instead of the windows, the slider, the roof that we talked about. Is that everyone's feeling all right? Could someone try a motion? I do appreciate that the applicant has gone to such great lengths to reduce the size, and I think that this will be a really good project at the end. So I do appreciate that. I know these deliberations can get long, so bear with us.
I guess since I threw the wrench into the shingle discussion, I'll attempt the motion here. Okay, I move to recommend an administrative adjustment for the height and bulk plane encroachment for the rear and south dormer to the zoning administrator per section 12.4.5.3 of the Denver zoning code, and conditionally approve application number 2022-COA-320 for the pop top addition at 440 Delaware Street as per design guidelines 2.24, 3.2, 3.3, 3.6, 3.7, 3.10, and 4.6, character defining features for the Baker Historic District, presented testimony, submitted documentation, and information provided in the staff report with the following conditions. 1, provide details on fascia and soffit materials. 2, change slider window to a window type allowed in landmark guidelines, and clarify window schedule and window manufacturer specifications in relationship to the window operation. 3, inset all windows at least 2 inches into the wall plane and accurately represent the window operation types. And 4, the proposed addition roofing to match asphalt shingles proposed for the replacement of the existing roof.
Thank you, Larry. That was a mouthful. Well done.
I'll second.
I will second.
I think Graham beat you to it, Erica. Thank you, Graham, for seconding. Any discussion on the motion? All right, let's vote. Graham.
Aye.
Gary.
Aye.
Larry.
Aye.
Erica.
Aye.
Anne.
Aye.
And Kelly. Aye. All right, so we have a unanimous vote and the motion passes. So the project is conditionally approved. Good luck. And I see it's a little after 3. Does anyone need a restroom break? Yeah, okay, so let's take a quick restroom break It's 3:05. Do we want to pause the recording? Let's start the recording. Great. So next project we have for review is 2022-COA-322 at 900 Oneida Street.
So our next project is also a pop-top addition in the Montclair Historic District. This is a non-contributing structure to the Montclair District. It was constructed in 1946, which is just outside of the period of significance, which is prior to and including 1940. The commission has previously reviewed and approved a pop-top addition at this site. However, since that November 16th review and approval, the applicant has expanded the project scope for this project. And essentially the second floor addition will come all the way flush to the front facade. It is no longer set back from the front facade as it was previously. So due to the expanded project scope, we will actually be reviewing this through our two-step infill construction process. So right now we're just looking at the design details for this pop-top addition, or sorry, not design details, mass form and context for the design of this pop-top addition. And this project scope will also include conversion of the attached garage into habitable space and construction of a new detached garage. So this project is located in the Montclair Historic District and is a corner property and is located across from a park, as you can see in this aerial image here. And then we just have an image of the front facade of the structure. So this will involve more than 40% demolition of the roof. However, as this is a non-contributing structure to the Montclair Historic District, it also does not require notice of demolition or a public hearing for demolition of that percentage of the roof. So no public noticing was provided, but here you can see that new proposed detached garage. It will be accessed via an existing curb cut and face onto East 9th Avenue. This is a typical condition in the Montclair neighborhood, particularly when alleys are not present, as is in this property case. So here is the existing structure. The majority of the roof will be demolished to accommodate the new addition. And one of the biggest changes to the primary structure is expansion of the existing kind of porch stoop into a much larger porch, but the majority of the house will remain the same with some minor modifications to window sizes, as you can see indicated on the south and north elevation on these elevations here. So here is the proposed pop-top addition. This addition is very similar to what the commission saw for the last addition. The major modifications are instead of having horizontal windows on the west elevation when the addition was set back, now they're more vertically oriented windows on the west elevation to contribute to the surrounding context. And then we have some accent windows also on this elevation to contribute to the surrounding context. On the existing sunroom addition, which is off of the south elevation, some cladding material will be replaced on that, but that was part of the prior application. So I don't have too many comments on that now, and we're still in the mass form and context phase of the submittal. A new and larger porch will be constructed. Front porches are typical of the Montclair Historic District, and we feel that the roof form of the expanded porch ties in nicely with the roof form of the new roof that will be constructed for the pop-top addition. Generally speaking, staff do feel that this is an appropriate addition for this particular structure as it respects the more mid-century character of this existing structure and is compatible with the surrounding historic context, as two-story contributing structures are typical in the Montclair Historic District. So in terms of compatibility, here's just some compatibility demonstrations. So you do see more tall vertically oriented windows as opposed to those horizontal windows that were proposed previously. And although the applicant didn't provide any images of square accent windows, those were done on recommendation of staff, in which that is a common detail within the Montclair Historic District. Here is the proposed garage. It is going to have a single bay on 9th Street, which is the front elevation image there. And then we'll have an additional roll-up door facing the primary structure. In terms of floor-to-floor heights for this addition, they are equal to each other, and that was proposed in the past addition. The commission felt that keeping those floor-to-floor heights more similar to each other respected the character of the Montclair neighborhood versus what we typically see on contributing structures in which the ground floor is taller than the second floor. So no change had been made to those floor-to-floor heights, so staff do feel that that's an appropriate change. So here is the project proposal. We are recommending approval of this project proposal. We do feel that the form is compatible with the Montclair Historic District, and also as much as possible respects the existing structure, and is something that we do see for these non-contributing structures within the Montclair Historic District. So we are recommending approval of the Phase 1 mass form and context.
Great, thank you. Are there any questions for staff? No. All right, is the applicant present? Have they been promoted? I'm not sure who it is.
This is Emily. Oh, yes. Okay, yes.
I'm doing it now, Emily.
I'm like, I don't see the names. No,
I did it.
Rachel. Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, great. So when you're ready, go ahead and unmute yourself and please start with your name and address.
Hello, I'm Rachel Nagy and I'm at 3501 Watts Boulevard and it's Wheat Ridge 80033. I'm the designer on the project and this has been quite a cycle, some evolution, but similar to what Brittany well explained, we have not changed many elements from our past submission that was approved. And we are taking every possible suggestion from Landmark to get this one also approved. So I believe that with all our efforts and Landmark's assistance and guidance, we're in a really great spot. And at this time, I don't necessarily have any other items to add, as I know many of you have kind of been with us along the ride. So I do think, and I'm not sure if they are, but the clients are on, and I will always just nudge to them to say if they have anything to add on this project, they may do so.
Is it possible?
I promoted Aaliyah. Didn't see. She looks like she's still muted. Hold on. Let me try this again. There she goes. Are you there, Leah?
You'll have to unmute yourself if you'd like to talk.
So sorry. I finally got in. My apologies. Hello, everyone.
Hi, was there anything that you'd like to add? You're on mute, sorry.
Certainly presented our position before, but I would just like to reiterate that we absolutely love our neighborhood. We've now, spent over 2 years here, and I think this design certainly allows us to expand our family and remain here. So thank you.
If you could just do your name and address for the record.
Leah Chellis, 900 Oneida Street.
Great. All right, are there any questions for the applicants? No? All right, everything looks clear. Thank you so much for your time. Are there any public comments on this project? Please use the hand raise button if you do.
I don't see any hands raised.
Okay. All right, then let's move into deliberation. So we've seen the project before, coming back with some revisions. How did everyone feel it met the guidelines? Considering it is non-contributing as well. I'll just throw out that I agree with the staff analysis on this. I think that it was very thorough, and it looks to me like it's appropriate with what's in the surrounding context. So I'd be in support of the mass form and context for this. I see some nodding heads. Yeah, Graham, did you?
Well, I was just going to say, this is the part of the meeting where we have to make a comment in honor of the diversity of the Montclair district, right? So I know that's always a part of the challenge and the pleasure of getting to take a look at different projects here in Montclair. So, but I agree. I think, between the context provided by the applicants and staff's analysis, that I feel good with this meeting the guidelines, as a non-contributing structure.
Thanks. Gary, how do you feel? I think I saw everybody else now.
I agree. And I'm not sure whether my comment is a mass form and context comment or a design detail comment, but it has to do with the primary facade. There's something just sort of wrong proportionally with the way the windows are positioned and the window placement. So, and maybe that's something that gets addressed in the next submittal. And I'm not sure how anybody else feels about it. It just, looking at that elevation straight on is just a little disconcerting, like something's not quite so it's the lower left-hand corner.
Yeah, I figured that's what you were referencing. I mean, I think the front door and everything seems really symmetrical first, or not symmetrical, but the second floor windows align with the first floor openings, but it's that window off to the left in the west elevation on the first floor. I didn't have a huge issue with it, but I see.
Okay. Well, it's not a deal killer for me either. It just looks like it could use some more attention. I'm not necessarily opposed to the two small square windows if something was done with the other two windows. I know the other two windows line up, but by doing something there, it kind of brings the whole composition into a little more trying to find the adjective, something more pleasing, but that's let's look at it next time.
Well, I
don't have a specific comment other than I find it a little the layout is just a little odd. I don't know if it's balance, I don't know if it's proportion, if it's placement, and it's not a deal killer for me. I'm just finding it that an improvement could make it more pleasing.
Gotcha.
If
it's a friendly comment, then yeah, I think that works. I was gonna say if you feel strongly that it needs to be revised, I think that is a mass form and context issue. The kind of, Brittany, correct me if I'm wrong, like placement and size of windows is typically mass form and context, right?
Correct.
But Gary, if it's not a deal breaker for you, I mean, they've heard.
It's not a deal. I just think it could be better.
Yeah. Okay. Well, they can choose to look at that if they'd like.
Sure.
It is a little setback, from that front porch.
And it's not the two little windows. It's for some reason lining up the two windows on the front. It doesn't read like it is lining up with the windows below. And that's all I'm gonna say.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. Well, it sounded, yeah, Anne.
Actually, I just want to say something about what Gary just said, because I agree with you. I think actually it's a little disconcerting that those two windows are floating out there and they're not actually centered on that plane up above. And then when you look at the plan, one of the windows actually could move. So the reason it's sort of a friendly comment is there is a pretty easy way. It's not a room, it's an open to below space that the applicant could look at that again, maybe, and relate those two windows to each other just a little bit better. And I appreciate Gary's comment.
Okay. All right. Well, it sounds like everybody's in support of the mass form and context. Got some friendly comments out there if the applicant chooses to revisit that little area on the west elevation. Who would like to make the motion?
I can make the motion.
Great.
I move to approve application number 2022-COA-322 for the addition Phase 1 mass form and context at 900 Oneida Street as per design guidelines 4.1 through 4.5, 4.7, 4.8, 4.12, 4.18, 4.19, character defining features for the Montclair Historic District, presented testimony, submitted documentation, and information provided in the staff report.
Thanks, Erica. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Thanks, Larry. All right, I'll call for the vote. Graham.
Aye.
Gary.
Aye.
Larry.
Aye.
Erica.
Aye.
Anne.
Aye.
And Kelly. Aye. All right, we have a unanimous vote, so the motion passes and the project is approved. So we'll see you back for design details. All right, and our last project for design review today is 2022-COA-324 at 331 University Boulevard.
Okay, so this is design detail for a single family residence and detached garage at 331 University Avenue, Country Club District. Proposed infill is a contemporary interpretation of a Tudor Revival style residence, a style found within the Country Club District. Characteristic Tudor Revival features incorporated into the proposed design include steeply pitched cross gable roof, street facing cat slide roof, vertically oriented grouped casement windows, projecting sidewall, and a combination of brick, stucco, and wood cladding. Staff finds that the proposed design is a successful modern interpretation of the Tudor Revival form. So here are the elevations of the proposed infill. At the upper left corner, that's the facade. Then you have the rear below that, and then the two side elevations. So the facade features vertically oriented grouped windows, which reference the fenestration patterns found on Tudor Revival residences. Windows are balanced, and the facade features a traditional solid to void ratio. Window operation on the house will be a combination of casement windows and fixed windows. The sash windows are often required in landmark districts. In this case, sash windows are not characteristic of Tudor Revival architecture. Casement windows are the most common type found on Tudor Revival buildings, so staff found that the casement windows proposed here are appropriate. No divided lights are being proposed for the windows, following guideline recommendation that infill uses simplified versions of traditional forms. So some alterations have been made to the fenestration since the mass form and context approval, particularly on the sides of the building. So really pretty much the front and rear, the fenestration has remained the same, but there have been changes made to the side. So for comparison, you see on the left there, this is what's being proposed in the design detail application. And on the right is what the commission previously approved in the mass form and context. So just wanted to share this to make the commission aware that some things have changed since your previous approval. It's mainly on the rear example there that the most significant changes have been made there on the north. So there's some atypical proportions, some kind of real variety of shape now. So some more square windows have been put in, more variety to the window patterns, not as much of a regular placement as you saw previously. But staff do not think that these are going to have a high visibility, any of these windows. So not of primary concern, but wanted to make the commission aware of those changes. So here is the footprint of the proposed infill. So there are 2 egress wells as well as 2 light wells that are being proposed at the basement level. Staff just also wanted to draw attention to the commission about the light well that's proposed on the south, since it is quite a bit larger than we typically see for light wells. So that light well contains 3 window openings and will have a total dimension of about 19.5 feet by nearly 5 feet. So pretty large window well. So that doesn't really fit district patterns. However, looking at its placement, it looks like it'll have fairly minimal visibility, particularly with the placement of a wall that is in front of it that you'll see on the site plan. So here you have kind of an overview. So you see there that wall that I'm talking about that kind of encloses the front patio. So that will kind of block views towards that really large light well. So just looking overall then here, staff finds that overall the materials and design details proposed are compatible with the district. So there's going to be 3 primary cladding materials proposed: brick, stucco, as well as wood siding. So this is more materials than we typically find or we typically approve on infill. Tudor revival designs typically featured a combination of brick and stucco cladding with wood trim. So staff finds in this case the combination of brick, stucco, and wood reflects the Tudor revival style, while the use of then kind of a shiplap wood siding in place of wood trim, which is typically on a Tudor revival, a faux half timbering, kind of provides a contemporary twist to the kind of Tudor revival reference. The front yard will be enclosed by a metal picket fence that is 4 feet in height, and a 6-foot wood fence will be located at the side and rear yards. There's also a 4-foot solid brick wall that will enclose a front yard patio at the southeast corner of the house. Solid 4-foot walls are not typical in the front yard. Generally, we require that walls in the front yard must be at least 50% open or lower in height. However, brick walls enclosing a front stoop are a feature that is commonly found on Tudor revival and English cottage residences. So in this case, it is kind of referencing a feature that is often found on the Tudor revival style. So some more details here on the materials. So you see there the brick that's proposed for the building. So this is a blonde brick, modular brick. The applicant is considering painting the brick. However, since Landmark does not have purview over painting, the commission should review the brick as proposed for compatibility with the district. Since we don't have any purview over whether or not they do decide to paint the brick or what that color would be, or, so we should, review the brick and its intrinsic color to make sure that you feel that that is compatible. The applicant is proposing to combine that with stucco as well as then a shiplap siding. So a little more discussion on the siding. So staff does find that the shiplap wood siding proposed is a compatible traditional product, but that some additional clarification is needed. So in the application, the wood siding is referred to both as tongue and groove and shiplap, but these are 2 different siding types. It does appear that they are proposing shiplap, so that should be clarified throughout. Additionally, the application says that the shiplap will have a 4-inch reveal. However, according to the Buffalo Lumber Company website, and where they're speccing the siding from, it appears that the Buffalo Lumber Company does not make a siding, a shiplap siding that has a 4-inch reveal. So this is the detail from their webpage, which says that it comes in a 3, 5, 6 3/4, or 8 or 10-inch versions. So this needs to be clarified. In this case, staff feels that a 5-inch reveal could potentially be acceptable. We generally require a 4-inch reveal, but in this case, it's a shiplap instead of the more typical clapboard siding style that we generally see. The use of siding is limited. It's a little bit more of an accent, and this is contemporary infill. So we think that 5-inch could be okay, but commission should consider that when you're thinking about any potential conditions and what you think, because it doesn't seem that the material as proposed is available in a 4-inch. So if you're okay with this material, you should talk about whether or not you'd be okay with either a 3-inch or a 5-inch, or one of the options that is available from the manufacturer. Additionally, you may also want to specify which type of wood is used. So those images at the far right corner, those are the 4 options of wood that are available from this manufacturer. So typically we would require for projects that wood with knots is not allowed in Landmark District, and you can see those lower ones do have knots. So you may want to also make that a, if you're making a condition, you may want to ask for clarification about that as well. As far as materials, then staff's only other concern is just that information's needed for the pedestrian door at the garage. No details were provided on this, and it was left out of, it's not labeled on the elevations, and was left out of the material specifications page. So then finally, staff just has some concerns with the proposed lighting. Staff find the lighting fixtures to be appropriate. They're simple and contemporary. The proposed exterior lighting includes both wall lighting as well as in-ground lighting. So Landmark staff is concerned about the in-ground lighting because it's up lighting. Typically, we require that lighting be limited to down lighting. And then also we typically require that wall lights be limited to entrances. Part of the guidelines that say lighting should be simplified and should be kind of the minimal amount of light that's really needed. So staff would recommend here that all in-ground lighting and wall lighting that's not adjacent to an entrance be removed from the side yards. We feel that additional lighting and flexibility could be allowed on the rear yard where it's not going to be readily visible, but that it's not appropriate in the side yard. So the red circles that you see there are the lights kind of in the side yard that staff is referring to. Those are either some of the wall fixtures that are not adjacent to an entrance, or those are locations of uplighting that is located in a side yard. So staff is, overall finds the design details proposed to be appropriate and to meet our guidelines. So we are recommending approval with conditions. So we're recommending 3 conditions. One, that clarification is provided on the siding. If you're looking at that, you may also want to make a recommendation as far as what reveal you think would be appropriate. Staff said we thought 5-inch was fine, as well as the type of lumber to be used. And then condition that all in-ground lighting and wall lighting that's not adjacent to an entrance be confined to the rear yard, and then that detail be provided on the pedestrian door at the garage in the plans.
Thank you. Are there any questions for staff? All right, thanks, Abby. Oh, Gary, did you have one?
Well, I have a question about whether or not we need to weigh in on what kind of lumber to use. And you're not talking about the species of lumber, you're talking about the grade and physical appearance. Is that right, Abby?
Yeah, so the detail that I included there was just from the manufacturer's webpage. So when you order their shiplap siding, there's 4 different options you can order. Right. So whether or not we wanted to, whether or not it would be appropriate, since we generally don't allow lumber with knots, that we specify one of one of the 4 options that they manufacture shiplap in, that it be one of the ones without knots.
Because they are planning to paint it a dark color, it doesn't really matter, does it?
Well, except that we don't review paint. So if they were to decide to do something else, like if they were to decide to put a clear coat on it or to paint it white or something else, we wouldn't have any purview over that. So you're right, that if it's painted dark, it's not going to show, but we don't have any purview over what color they decide to paint it.
Okay, thank you.
Great, thanks. And it looks like the applicant's with us, so feel free to get started whenever you're ready. Unmute yourself, and by now you know the drill.
Hey everybody, this is Nick Young at 2060 Hoyt Street. I'm owner of Mod Architecture Plus Design. We helped the owners design their home. We've made it through mass form and context here, landed on the Tudor Revival style. Abby does a stellar job always teeing us up here, so I think I'll just go down her and staff's concern, if that's fine, and then I guess we can go back and forth with some other elements if the board sees other instances. I think if we could go back to just in order, I'll go in order that Abby shared in reference to the north facade. That slide, she had the old elevations relative to the new.
Brittany, can you move the slides back? I'm trying to move the slides back to show the, thank you. And I can't get them to move. Okay, just wanted people to be able to see that what you're referring to, Nick.
Stellar, thank you. We're really happy with, so on the south, or I'm sorry, on the bottom is the north elevation. On the top is the south elevation for the home. On the left, like Abby said, that's our revised latest and greatest. This elevation turned out really great. You can see that stucco in the strong peak. When looking at the north elevation, it was a topic in our mass form and context review. We originally had the roof line broken down and we had a different roof about a third of the way back. However, in the district, we found that a continuous ridge was more appropriate given the Tudor Revival style. So that was great from a roof form, but it also made that north facade a bit more simplistic. So we broke it down in some way. This is about as simple as we wanted to kind of get without getting kind of crazy and start breaking up with more than two materials or breaking up brick in certain capacities. So we felt is appropriate just to wrap to some type of termination. In this point, you see that we stopped on the windows there on the left. And then on the right, it was to kind of frame this mudroom door moment. And then hopefully I'm glad we're starting here because I think when we talk about lighting in a second, you'll see, I think even this light sconce in this moment can play into this. So we feel as if we're there and we've gotten a lot better, but we're anxious to hear your guys' input. For the window wells, the next slide, or maybe even two slides from, we have the large window well to the south in this case. The intent of this is just south facing light, get more light into this basement. That's the entertainment rec area, as you can see. We have on the detail on the right, we do plan on getting a custom grate, so it'll look nice if seen from, let's say, the neighboring unit to the south off their second story, perhaps. We feel as if you won't really see it from the primary street, due to the porch wall, which we'll talk about in a moment. But I think we're open if it's a large contingency to do some similar window wells as we have on the north and the northwest corner. For the porch wall on the next slide, I think what I'm going to speak to is more zoning characteristics as we consider this a porch. Therefore, we're utilizing that 8-foot allowable encroachment. Actually comparing this to, let's say, your last project, you look at 900 Oneida, looked like they had about a 4.5-foot tall wall. However, that massing is broken down because they have the roof over that porch. Unfortunately, the roof isn't really atypical of this style in this district. So we just have that ground plane stoop kind of with the porch element. Now the datum and the top of that datum, the top of that element, I think we're open to bringing it down slightly. However, the little bit higher we get, just the more privacy it provides. It's at a decent sitting height right now while you're up there as well on that porch. And then what's also indicative of this style is the raised porch element. So therefore it does appear a little bit larger from grade. For the next slide, talking about the brick. Our intent is as Abby mentioned, we shot her an email. Our intent is to possibly just paint the brick, it seems, because the Arctic white that we have called out, we got the sample and it's very, very bright. And we're looking more of like Chantilly lace or something a bit softer white. So we'll see what comes into play there. And just for clarity, it's not that blonde color. Our intent is more of the isometric there shown in the renderings. For the siding, sorry for the confusion. I believe we are interested in this manufacturer's product. So a 5-inch reveal shiplap, not tongue and groove. If we need to choose, we're probably going to choose the near clear cedar over there on the right. Something less knotty. I don't think we have the budget for the perfectly clear cedar, especially if we're going to paint it dark. I don't know. I think we might choose something a little bit knottier though, if you guys are open to it. So it would be nice to get that feedback because we are indeed painting it that dark gray color. Lastly, for the lighting, the last slide, it seems as recently, and I think one or two of the board might live in the area. It seems as if there were some break-ins earlier, so that the homeowners are concerned about security given its proximity to university here. So it would be nice to receive some feedback relative to not only the proposed lighting, but just lighting in general relative to security. So I don't know if, I guess everybody's getting these the detached, let's say, Arlo lights that light up at night. I presume that's fine. So I guess if you guys could speak to maybe just a little bit about security and what you're seeing maybe in the neighborhood and what you're allowing. I think that's all I have, other than, one last thing, Abby, which I don't know if we made clear to you. You'll see, if anyone was familiar with this project in mass forming context, we did have a carport off the side of the detached garage out back. We removed that just to bring simplicity to the project amongst a few other things, and then cladded that garage and the siding to match the home. That's all I got.
Great, thank you. Are there any questions for the applicant? Yeah, Anne.
I have just a detailed question about the north elevation. And this is the question I have is, I can see on your detail sheet the detail that shows the sill where the brick goes to the stucco. But what happens on the jamb side?
For those windows.
I'm looking at your detail 13, and the reason I'm asking is because it looks from your detail 13 that the stucco is farther back than a white brick. So what happens going up the side?
Like where the depth of that brick, because the stucco will be recessed. Got it. That's a great question. I presume, I don't know that answer off the top of my head. I presume we'll need to either I guess double up that brick if the size of the brick isn't enough to cover up that delta, I guess, is probably going to be the play. I don't think we would institute or bring in some type of stucco sill that transitions to brick. I think we would continue that brick back.
All right.
Any other questions? No? All right. Thanks for your time. Okay, are there any public comments on this project?
I don't see any hands raised. No.
Okay. Any recap, Abby? No. All right, then let's move into deliberation. So we're looking design details on this one. Coming back to us after we've seen it once with some revisions. What did everybody think? How does it meet the guidelines? Do you agree with the staff analysis? I see Gary shaking his head.
I was going to say this proposed building fits into the context a lot better than the existing building does.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Although I also understand the time and place that that particular design was popular. But I think this will be a nice improvement to the district. And I agree with the staff's comments.
I agree. I think it's definitely a modern interpretation, which, you know, is supportive of the guidelines. And at first, the changes on the north and south facades kind of threw me, but because it is infill and it is a modern interpretation, I think that the large openings and the variation that's shown is appropriate, and it's not, you know, on the front facade. So I'm supportive of the changes that they made. Maybe let's talk more about some of the recommended conditions and the items that came up by both staff and the applicant. So starting with the shiplap. So he did clarify that they're intending to use the shiplap, but that they are open to a naughty kind of option due to cost. So what is everyone's thoughts on that? Do you have a preference? Based on the guidelines, of course. Thanks, Larry.
Yeah, I guess I just had a question about that. I mean, the guidelines in general, or the material guidelines in general, specify smooth siding when it's like fiber cement, not using kind of that impressed wood grain look. And I guess I'm thinking if it goes to a knotty wood, then it's emphasizing that texture in a similar way as the kind of non-smooth, like hardy board siding would do. And so it seems like the clear grain would be more in line with the general guidelines around siding. But
yeah, I guess my real question is where, I mean, I get the no faux wood grain when you're not actually using wood, but this is wood. So I mean, is there somewhere, Abby, in the guidelines where it says not to?
This is actually one of those, I think it's in our COAs. So we have language in our certificates of appropriateness that say that it needs to be that if you're using wood, it needs to be a high quality lumber without visible knots. But yeah, that's kind of an odd, like it's more kind of referenced generally that in our guidelines, but not specifically, but our COA does have that specific language. But you know, certainly we sometimes will adapt the language in our COA if the commission specifically approves something different than our standard language, you know, we can adapt that. But just typically that's basically been accepted practice, that in our COAs have language that say, you know, no wood with visible knots.
Gotcha.
So I just want to speak more specifically to that as Abby is saying, you know, the guideline 4.6 that talks about materials, it talks about similar in scale, color, texture, and finish to those seen historically in the district. And certainly wood with knots would give a much more rustic appearance than I think either the applicant is going for, or what we think meets the guidelines overall to this design that we see before us. So, you know, I think it comes down to, I understand that they're interested in the knots because of cost and because they're planning to paint over it. However, in the future, the paint could even be removed and then the knots would be revealed. So while I am sympathetic to their interest in the knots, I think in the grand scheme of things, we're more in keeping with the guidelines by asking for the clear cedar.
Kelly,
near clear cedar.
I'll jump in, I guess, just with the kind of perspective from the construction side. That I think the clear cedar here, which again, understanding it's not necessarily our purview to consider cost, would be asking the owners to probably consider a material that's twice as expensive as the whether it's a select type knot or a number 2 type of grade for this material. And I think that once it is painted, this siding will be milled, it'll be surfaced to, a smooth sanded surface, which maybe to speak to Larry's question about the wood grain, I think that, there's a chance you'd see a little bit of the early and late growth rings after that's been milled, but it would most likely read pretty flat in my experience, from a lumber spec perspective. And so if you did a select tight knot or, a not clear, but not, builder's grade kind of material, I think that would be a pretty minimal condition that would be perceived, especially if it's painted, and that, contrast of knots and regular wood growth and grain, aren't visibly or otherwise colored differently, if that makes sense. So again, understanding that cost is not something that falls under our purview. I think just based on practical experience of having installed a number of different grades of sidings and paneling material, that a select tight knot, which would be more of a mid-grade as opposed to a true clear cedar, I feel like would still satisfy the high quality, typical kind of historic material, not old growth, of course, like it might have been, but, without potentially limiting a true clear material, which is often reserved for clear finishes or, high profile kind of furniture or millwork applications, or sometimes for its structural capabilities, which is a siding, especially one that will be painted, may not necessarily apply here. So I guess a few cents from the wood shop there for consideration, but I generally agree with the sentiment here that I think whatever siding is installed doesn't want to be naughty for naughty's sake. But I think, where we get into the nuances of how that's specified, probably even something from this mill select cedar that we're looking at, kind of option 3 of 4, is going to be a pretty minimal naughty appearance, I would expect. Although I'd be happy to see if anybody else has shared that experience in past projects.
Thanks for that, Graham. I think that's helpful. And that's exactly what I was going to ask you. So you were looking more at the mill select or the near clear kind of level from this manufacturer as being something that you think would be acceptable?
Yeah, it's interesting because each mill kind of has their own adjectives sometimes that they like, but an industry standard clear is definitely high grade, no knots, and near clear is maybe just the seconds there, sometimes even referred to that way. But a select tight knot Western red cedar is very common, very nice material that gets used for outdoor patio furniture, siding, all kinds of things like that. Clear material is beautiful, but it's expensive for a reason, because it is a small portion of what's otherwise harvested and processed by the mills. And there's a lot of really good material that's stable and durable that may have a few knots, but not be generally that kind of knotty pine look or something that folks tend to associate with I guess that descriptor, if you will.
Thanks. Anyone else have anything to add on the wood selection discussion? I would tend to think that what you just explained makes sense to me, especially since it is going to be painted, and yeah, it might be exposed over time, but if it's I agree that, if it's that mid-grade rather than the low or the high, that seems to be logical for this application. Larry?
Yeah, I guess I just have one kind of question about the relationship of contemporary materials to historic materials in this case. I mean, I think from everything I've seen in the use of wood siding in historic buildings in Denver, which is usually kind of confined to small areas since so much is brick typically, but it does seem to be generally clear material. And I definitely hear Graham's point around cost being very, a major concern there. And I know that now costs are quite a lot higher for high grade lumber than it used to be. But also thinking about, why does the COA typically specify clear material? I think it's partly because, that's what would have been utilized historically in the district. And I think it's also the long-term stability of anything with a significant amount of knots. And when I look at that Mill Select cedar and thinking about my own experiences with like Select Tight Knot, it's got a good number of knots that, 20 years down the line, a lot of those, exposed to the sun and elements could well like completely pop out in some cases or raise above the surface and really, make themselves visible. So I kind of don't want to, I'm hesitant to like allow something that isn't typical within, what landmarks or what landmark staff have approved. And especially in consideration of that would be significantly different than material that's typically on historic buildings.
So Abby, if we did not provide in a condition an indication of which type to move forward with, the COA would just be issued as it typically is, stating that there be no knots, correct?
Correct.
I don't think that helps the conversation. I was just curious, sorry. I understand your hesitancy, Larry, and I don't know where I fall here.
I guess if I can just throw in one other thing, I think that part of the reason too that the cost is maybe less of a consideration is that there's always the option of using smooth lap siding, which would achieve a similar effect. I know that it's slightly different than shiplap, but it doesn't seem in this case that it would be, significantly change the feeling of the project.
That's true. That's true. They would have that option if they didn't want to go to the cost of doing a clear or near clear. Okay. Good point. So we've heard from Graham, we've heard from Larry. What does everybody else think? I do want to move on from this topic, but I want to make sure that we're in consensus here. Yeah, I am.
Well, one thing I think maybe to take into consideration is where this material is located. And it's this sort of secondary, more contemporary enclosure to this particular project, because the main elevation is in brick. And so I tend to not worry as much. I appreciate what the staff says and what Erica says and Larry, but I tend to think that it is all of the locations where this is enclosed are contemporary. And so I think that doesn't necessarily have to live up to the quality of what would have been built if this was a true Tudor revival. So I'm okay not going with clear as the only option.
Thanks, Anne. Erica or Gary, anything to add here?
I think I've kind of said what I feel about it, that I think it's best to go with what has been done in the past.
That's true. Sorry. I forgot about that. Graham threw me for a loop with his, and I forgot everything that was discussed before.
Upset the apple cart. I won't disagree that clear material is really nice, and it, certainly does get used often. So I'm very comfortable with the consistency factor in this case and in many cases, in all cases.
Mhm. Gary, any final words on this matter?
Well, I'm thinking, I mean, I hear what Graham's saying, and what I'm thinking is if the COA says no knots, even clear material, depending on the grade, because I don't think the grades that are showing in this slide are the grades that the Western Red Cedar Association uses. Like Graham said, every merchandiser has their own sort of grades. And, wood has knots, and it's really about how small are the knots and how frequently do they occur and how tight they are. And that all has to do with how the wood is graded. So if we say in the COA, no knots, what's going to happen if there's 20 knots in that whole facade that are, a half-inch in diameter?
I think you could just say as few knots as possible.
Okay, yeah, that's what I'm driving at, because it's a natural material and there will be not defects, but undesirable natural characteristics.
And that's the case for all wood. And so
Yeah,
I think we're way in the weeds on this.
Yeah.
Like
Okay, thanks,
20
Jen.
minutes ago in the weeds.
So I think it sounds like the consensus is to maintain the status quo. And I don't think in that case, we don't really need an extra condition on it because that'll be in the COA. So let's move on. Thanks, Jen, for pulling us back. Okay, so other than that, I'm pulling back up the conditions here that were recommended. We talked about the shiplap extensively. Just on lighting real quick, does everyone agree that the in-ground lighting and wall lighting should confine all in-ground lighting and wall lighting that is not adjacent to an entrance or the rear yard? Does everyone agree with that condition? Any other lighting comments? All right. And then providing detail on the pedestrian door at the garage seems straightforward. Were there any other comments anyone has on this project?
I actually think that we should ask for the jam detail on the north elevation because it's quite an unusual situation and the architect would need to have that in order to build it anyway. And I think it would be a great idea if staff would review it.
Great, yeah. All right, well, it sounds like that that covers all the discussion that we need on this project. Who wants to make the motion?
I can make the motion.
Thanks, Anne.
Madam Chair, I move to conditionally approve application number 2022-COA-324 for the design detail of the proposed infill at 331 University Avenue as per Country Club Design Guidelines E1, E2, F1, and F3, Design Guidelines 4.3, 4.5, 4.6, 4.8, 4.16, 4.19, 5.3, 5.21, and 5.22. Character defining features for the Country Club Historic District, presented testimony, submitted documentation, and information provided in the staff report with the following conditions. 1, provide clarification on the siding shiplap with a 5-inch reveal. Shiplap with a 5-inch reveal is acceptable. 2, confine all in-ground lighting and wall lighting that is not adjacent to an entrance to the rear yard. 3, provide detail on the pedestrian door at the garage. And 4, clarify the jam condition at the north elevation where the brick goes to stucco.
Thanks, Anne. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thanks, Gary. All right, I'll call for the vote. Graham?
Aye.
Gary?
Aye.
Larry?
Aye.
Erica?
Aye.
Anne?
Aye.
Kelly? Aye. All right, we have a unanimous vote and the motion passes, so the project is conditionally approved. All right, that ends our design review projects today, but we do have a big discussion item. So the draft design guidelines update. Jen, do you want to kick that off or?
Kelly, I just wanted to jump in just real quick too. I've got a daycare pickup here just about 4:45. So if we're still in the middle of it, I just want to let folks know I'll hang as long as I can here, but
great.
Didn't want to disappear without announcing that. So thanks.
Kelly, do you want to explain on this one, just the process and that there will be public comment potentially if there's anyone here at the end?
Yeah, sorry about that. So yeah, the process is up on the screen. So I've announced the one discussion item, which is going to be the draft design guidelines phase 1 update. And so staff is going to introduce it. Then we'll go ahead and discuss, and public comment is available. So if there's anyone on the line who would like to make a public comment, it'll be 2 minutes per person.
Thanks. Awesome. And that you guys don't vote on discussion items.
Correct.
So this is not the vote today. So Brittany threw these slides up. So thank you, Brittany, for that. Over the past several years, we've realized that we need to do a pretty major revision. So we're splitting this into 4 phases. As I mentioned last time, we had a discussion item that you guys will adopt each phase individually. So we're just focusing on phase 1 today. And we have a compiled draft of design guidelines based on the comments we received, as well as from the public through the public comment period on these, they were on our website and we advertised those. We got 102 online comments and 3 emailed letters. So that was really great. And then we had 2 people provide comment at the public, at the discussion item at the last time in June, and now we're here today. And hopefully we can move forward with a public hearing for September 20th. That is the tentative schedule at the moment. But we don't have anything teed up to have a discussion about. It's wanted to, I think Brittany will take down this, there we go, take down the slides, and it'll be a true discussion because we didn't have anything specific based on public comment that we wanted you guys to address this time, since you guys covered it all last time. So have at it.
Go ahead, Gary.
This might just be a minor semantic thing, but in the historic roof replacement section, I'm wondering if the use of the word roofing is more appropriate than the word roof, because the word roof kind of sounds like includes the structure, and what we're really talking about is the roofing material. And I think I might have even mentioned that in the when it was the online comments. And I'm willing to sort of hear what the consensus is, but semantically, I think roofing, when it refers to roofing materials, is a more appropriate term.
I think that is accurate, and I think we just missed that. So I remember seeing that in the online comments, and I think we addressed it in one place or maybe 2, but didn't get it everywhere, it sounds like. So
yeah, I thought we fixed it, but I see we fixed it in the new guideline that we wrote about roofing, and not in, because there's only like three versions of this floating around.
Yeah, we'll fix that. Thanks, Gary. Go for it.
I'll go ahead, I guess. So one thing that stuck out to me, and I don't remember if we had talked about this last time, but the measurement of inset for a double hung window is in a number of places referred to as being measured from the lower sash. And I guess that was a little bit strange to me, because it seems like from the exterior, the lower sash is the one that's inset already, and so you could find yourself in a situation where the upper sash is only half an inch inset or something like that. Is that the intent of that?
Yeah, so, and I'm looking at Brittany and Jesse to jump into, but it's my experience, or it's my understanding that in previous meetings that we've had, commission meetings and projects that you all have reviewed, we've heard from applicants and builders that having the window inset and then 2 inches between that and the upper sash and the framing materials and the cladding materials requires a totally different waterproofing detail. And that if it's from the lower sash, then they can frame out around and kind of build that up to provide that shadow line. And really it's just the goal is to have a shadow line because a lot of the things that we were seeing were just flush windows or sometimes outboard, which was a little weird.
I think the objective is to have the windows in the wall the way they would have been done historically.
Mm-hmm.
So like in a brick, with a brick veneer, 2 inches, even 2 inches to the upper sash is appropriate. But in a wood frame, wood sided, it's different. And I think really the objective is to avoid what's commonly done in contemporary construction, where the window actually protrudes a little bit out in front of the face of stucco, which is it's a bad detail, period, and certainly not appropriate in a historic compatibility context.
Yeah, Jesse?
To my recollection of past deliberation from commission members and like applicants that had presented to the commission, especially when they're doing a frame and like wood siding or some type of wood cladding exterior addition, it's really difficult to meet that 2-inch inset on the upper sash. So the commission had in the past allowed some flexibility and had more clearly defined it as measuring to that lower sash so that they are able to accomplish some type of inset. And as Gary said, make it more compatible with the existing historic windows on the house.
Graham?
That makes sense to me.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think, I mean, some of those details or concerns we've seen, the modern window installation with a fin, right, which is meant to just be surface mounted on sheathing and slide right behind the siding, is what gets us to that closer plane. And often, you can either cut off or fold those fins back and inset the window, but it does create a separate layer, traditional brick mold or another type of trim, which we're used to seeing in historic buildings, but feels like extra work and an extra layer, right, for somebody who's used to a kind of modern modular, window system. So, I understand that that's a place where we get pushback, but I think there are solutions that we could offer around it as well. It is very clean to throw a window fin on sheathing and put zip tape or Tyvek tape right to it, and you have a nice continuous, air barrier, weather barrier, all those things. But depending on how strict or picky we feel like we should be about that detail. I think even in being able to order a minimum jam thickness for a 2x4 exterior wall, that gets into the nuance of a window package. Most manufacturers are going to make a window set for a modern, typical stud construction. And so if it is a 2x4 wall and you've got a window that you're pushing into the wall, then you get into furring out the interior walls, which is also a slippery slope, right? So I don't know, I guess it's possible for the record, right? But it can be a pain. So for whatever that's worth.
I will say also too, we have put together renderings or drawings demonstrating what that inset will look like, and those will accompany the guidelines so that it's more clear to applicants what we expect when we're talking about an inset. We have it on both like a brick veneer as well as a frame wood clad or cementitious siding clad building.
I think that's great because I think the diagrams read really well and are easy for people to review. I think sometimes our guidelines can be so cumbersome, and I do see that a lot of our guidelines have lengthened to describe more, which I totally understand the reasoning, and I think that they're worded really well, so well done. Not a complaint, but I think the diagrams will just help people digest the information much better, so that's great.
And for the record, Jessie is the one who's doing them, and that's why she says we, it's not really.
Kind of going along with windows, I wondered about the proposed language for 2.18E about egress windows when they're above basement level. They're specifically called out that they should be wood or aluminum clad wood. But I wonder about the cases where, you know, we see actually steel windows, or so I guess I'm wondering if the language should be a little more inclusive, like we see in 2.19E, where we have examples of other types that, you know, we're wanting these egress windows to kind of blend in better with whatever the historic windows that we see elsewhere.
Yeah, that's a good question. And again, Brittany and Jesse, tell me if I'm wrong here. I believe that most of the applications we get for egress windows tend to be vinyl, and then when they're not vinyl, they're Fibrex or sometimes wood or aluminum clad wood. And so because we don't allow vinyl in historic districts, we have pushed people, like currently it's drafted so that it could be composite fiberglass, but we've expanded it to Fibrex as well, because that's something that you guys have approved on new construction. But yeah, I mean, sometimes they are aluminum. So yeah, that's like a reasonable one.
Yeah, I guess it, you know, the second sentence of 18E, 2.18E talks about if they're above basement level, they're only wood or aluminum clad. And yeah, rather than, you know, these other options that we see.
Yeah, and the reason for that is because usually those are second story egress windows. And so, or sometimes, you know, on the first floor for a bedroom, but they're replacing a historic window. And so it's comparable to when people are replacing a historic window to match the historic material. We have very few buildings in our historic districts that are modern with full-on, not modern, mid-century, that have full-on metal windows. And so it hasn't.
No, I understand it's probably less common, but it just seems like
it will be.
Yes, exactly. It will become more common.
We don't get a lot of still proposed because the heat factor of pushing those out too for egress, to be honest with you, it's when we ask for wood or aluminum clad, the main pushback is always like, that gets too hot. So I don't anticipate we'll get that, but we can certainly look at it.
I had, sorry if I unmuted there for a second. I had two other small comments, or one was 2.23D is, I don't understand the wording of it, and thought it, not that I necessarily agree with what's being suggested, I just thought maybe it should be looked at again and clarified. It seems a little awkward.
I think our attorneys commented on that as well. I'm looking at their draft right now, which I think is different wording.
Yeah,
I agree with you. That's very.
There's a lot of if that is similar to, if that is similar to. Yeah, so we'll clean that up for sure. And just so everyone knows as well, we did get some comments, some copy edits, and some comments from both of our attorneys. We didn't. We got them just before we submitted them to you all, and so we didn't have a chance to make a lot of those edits, but we were planning to. So you will see some copy edit changes that will happen between now, but not probably not much substantive change.
Yeah, so, yeah, I figured.
Oh, you're good, Erica. I was just gonna say, like, was the intent, did they just accidentally type if a design that is similar twice? Okay. Cool. Just
yeah,
want to make
so.
sure I understand.
When replacing an historic door on a non-primary facade, use a design that is similar to the historic or an alternative design. that is in character with the historic building. Yes,
So no if either. Right, okay. Yep, that makes sense. And I just wanted to bring up, I thought when we had discussed solar panels, we had discussed a concern about how panels could be placed in like the pattern, not just the placement or how they obscure things, but how the pattern of them might be distracting. And I didn't really see any language that addressed that. Maybe there was something that you intended to address that, but I just wanted to bring that up.
So that's been a point of discussion many times by staff with the public comment or the community meeting process thing, and with you all. And there has not been great consensus on it is the issue. So it has to do with, we talked about using symmetry, but symmetry won't always work because you have chimneys and you have other things. And so, so it's more about the layout being not adversely affecting the character defining features of the property. So that's under new guideline A. So it's under 2.33, and then the next guideline, that's the new guideline, and we'll put a number in there. A is to locate it to avoid obscuring distinctive roof features such as dormers or chimneys, or adversely affecting the character defining features of the property. And the idea there being that it would be compatible based on solar gain, because you need to have them actually be functional solar panels, but also to avoid using specific language like symmetry or yeah. So if you guys have suggestions for language, let us know.
Well,
I had actually, sorry, Gary, I just want to put in that I had actually proposed language that maybe it's too vague, but I thought at our last meeting, I had proposed language that was something like consideration of placement of panels to avoid distracting from historic materials, or I can't remember the exact language, but I definitely think it's correct to avoid too specific language that may not be correct for each instance, like symmetry or horizontal versus vertical, things like that. But it just seems like there could be a little bit more about the actual pattern of the panels. But I see what you're saying, that the A refers to that, but just wondering if there's something more that could be said.
Yeah, well, I'll take a look at notes from that for sure. Thanks. Gary?
Well, I was wondering, I know trying to put in words the flexibility that's needed, and at the same time to achieve the intended result. And I don't have any suggestion. I think the language is pretty good. I'm wondering if showing actual photographs of good installations or acceptable installations and some that aren't acceptable, rather than a graphic drawing. I think a graphic drawing is good, but I've been looking a lot, as I walk through neighborhoods at how panels are installed. And sometimes the underlying roof color has as much to do with whether an installation is acceptable or not. And so, to kind of give good examples and bad examples, and then let the language and the discussion kind of take care of the individual cases.
I think that's a great idea. I mean, like we have in other areas, the guidelines where you have like a red X on bad examples and a green check on good ones.
But those are always graphic, they're sort of cartoonish. I think helps, but I think when you actually look at actual photographs of installations that are both good, bad, and ugly, it can help an applicant decide just how to deal with a particular installation.
Are you trying to add to my workload, Gary?
No. I can send you. I can send you photographs though, and then you can,
Yeah,
you can figure it out.
I was gonna ask it when y'all are out and see examples, if you
Yeah.
could let us know where you are. You don't even have to take the photo. We'll go take the photo, but let us know where you are and what you're looking at. That would be really helpful for us.
Mhm. For sure. Also, this is kind of a strange one, but there's a movement in preservation commissions to not show bad examples, but to just be positive. So to say, here's a great way to do it, that, and multiple great ways to do it. So, so we would like to veer in that direction instead of less and have fewer of the, X marks.
Well, there's some legal consequences if you happen to show a bad example and somebody takes objection to using their property. That's
Well,
what,
I think that by showing examples of what is acceptable leaves the door open for materials to mature or materials to become more appropriate for that technology to improve, and for you guys to add on an as-needed basis or on a case-by-case basis new products that might be appropriate down the road.
Great. Other thoughts on things we need to tweak, things that aren't working?
I think just in general, the solar panel adjustments are exciting because that's something we've all been almost apologetic for, right? For several years, like our philosophy and our paperwork said two different things, or, however, so it's just exciting that we're making this happen.
Thank you for all the hard work you guys have done. This is a huge undertaking.
Yes, I wanted to reiterate that as well. It is a huge undertaking, and thank you all for all the work that you were doing on this.
It's just the tip of the iceberg too. Just phase one.
I also, if you have like marked up your actual copy or a copy, like send that to me, because I am largely making a lot of the edits and I'm not great at copy writing edits. So especially since I now had to incorporate attorney comments like later. So I am a little lost this time, but we'll get it all right, I promise.
Tell us how you really feel.
So
I'm just not good at it. Like anything to help you, I will appreciate.
Better you than me. I will take the drawings any day.
And just so you all know also, in order to make the September 20th deadline, we need to have a final draft to the clerk and recorder for publication towards the end of August. It's the week of the 22nd, I believe. And so we're now going to be in a bit of a crunch time. So if you do have images or places that you think we should take pictures of, let us know quickly.
Great. Is now a good time? I know it's been a long meeting, to ask about public comments.
Yes, because we have one.
Okay.
We have a hand raised.
Great. So I think we're doing 2-minute public comment periods, just like our design review projects.
Yeah, Brittany, do you have a clock? Okay, cool. All right, Stuart, you're welcome to unmute yourself.
Hello. Still Stuart Hayden, and I'm
Oh, we can't hear you. You're really quiet.
All right. Can you hear me better now?
Little bit. You just sound very far away.
All right, I'll get close.
There we go.
All right. Stuart Hayden, 35 Grape Street, still. And I'm curious, I guess, about the intent of the supplemental guideline to 2.33 that we were just talking about, specifically letter G, and whether it's kind of the intent of the commission to allow integrated solar panels, I mean, namely Tesla tiles, because that's currently pretty much all that exists, and how those do or don't replicate, the, I guess, traditional roofing materials like the asphalt or synthetic wood shingles that are referenced in that guideline, because I think they're like 15 by 45 inches. And as far as I know, that's not very similar to any kind of, traditional roofing material. Thanks.
Great. Do you guys want me to address that, or should we see if there's other public comment? Happy to.
Let's address it. Yeah.
Great. Yeah, sounds good. So we've gotten a couple of Tesla requests, solar tile requests. However, we also got a request for solar panels integrated into an asphalt shingle roof. It was a unique product. Do you guys remember this at all? It was like a flat panel of roof, or flat section of roof, or not flat, sorry, it was like shed side of a roof, and around it were asphalt shingles, and in the middle were solar panels, but they were kind of like tiles, and it was very different than integrated solar panels into the roof, or integrated solar tiles. I'm using terrible language right now. Whereas like a Tesla product or another product that's really integrated goes all the way to the edge, and you can't tell where the tile is tile and where the tile is solar tile. Whereas in this other application, it was very clear. There was a very clear distinction between asphalt shingle and solar tile section. And so that's part of the reason that we said this in section G of the new guideline under 2.33 you can put them on primary structures in historic districts if the solar tiles match the profile and texture of the existing roofing material or have a closely matching appearance. We have also seen Tesla's website has had indication that they're moving towards going with barrel vaulted tiles or some sort of tiles that will look like historic roofing at some point soon. So trying to give more flexibility down the road.
And I would just like to add that we have approved a couple, right, Tesla tile installations.
Yeah, you did one in Baker, and it was a non-contributing building. It was a contemporary building from the 90s or early aughts. And you also approved one on a fairly low slope building in Montclair that was contributing.
It was
right?
contributing.
Yeah, that's the one I was thinking of too.
And from what we've heard is they've been successful. So sorry.
So if I'm hearing you correctly, Jen, that if in this G clause is kind of, it's not clear that how easily that can be met in most applications today, but we want it there in case it can be.
Yeah, because hopefully it will be available very soon.
Great. Are there any other public?
Sorry, can I just make one comment about that? Because I think to me, in this whole question, it's 2.33D. Is that it? 2.33D? Whichever one is, it's to install panels so they can be removed and get back to the original character. And I guess that's always been, to me, the saving grace of this whole thing is that we can do this. And whenever this comes up, the people that present it almost always are the manufacturer, and they're trying to get the most possible BTUs for. I mean, that's their thing, and so it's sort of hard to argue because they'll tell us how inefficient it is if we don't put all these things all over the place. But the saving grace is that what we always can fall back on is that we're saying, okay, but it has to be removable. And once you get to G and it's integrated, it's a completely different ballgame. And so that kind of worries me. I guess I have to say that worries me because I feel like no matter what we approve everywhere else, it can always be undone, but that one actually can't be undone. And I don't quite know how you square that.
It's a good point of discussion.
Unless you replace the roofing.
Well, I mean, if you have a character defining roof that is, maybe it's a green concrete tile, for example, like a French tile or something. and you want to replace it with solar shingle. What do you all think about that? Like, what are we precluding people from doing that, or are we allowing people to do that?
In that particular case, to make it reversible, they have to salvage and save all the concrete tile. I mean,
Yeah, but how do we enforce that?
I know.
That's the big one. I mean, I think most people, when they remove a tile or 4 to put in solar panels, or maybe 10, they're going to save those for reuse when another tile breaks.
The whole question of reversibility is very slippery, because how many additions have we approved that are reversible? I mean, that just to talk about additions. So it's an unresolvable at the present, I think, dilemma about, we just have to use our judgment, I guess. If it's a truly character defining roof with, tile or in some cases metal or whatever, it has to be a case by case basis.
Brittany, you have your hand up.
I was just going to say the attorneys had questions on D about how we even enforce a D. So that's something we need to address. So I don't know how we would do it for an entire roof tile system.
I don't know where you store that. You can store
Yeah.
a few tiles in your garage pretty easily, but. Kelly?
I think Larry had a comment too before me. Did you have one, Larry?
Sure, thank you. With regards to the solar tiles, item G does say may be used on accessory structures or to replace non-historic roofing materials. So I think it kind of rules out replacing like a clay tile or cement tile roof, if I'm not correct.
Yeah, I was looking at that too, and I was just going to say that I think the as Gary said, we review it on a case by case basis, and if it's a character defining feature to have this certain type of tile roof that it has, like the green kind of French tile you were talking about in that example, then I don't think it would be appropriate, because they wouldn't look similar unless Tesla comes out with that next. But yeah, so I think that does cover us, though, how it says non-historic roofing materials. So were there other public comments? Obviously, it was a good public comment because we just had a ton of discussion on it. So thanks, Stuart.
Yep, we have one more, Ozzy. There we go. You're welcome to unmute whenever you're ready.
Yeah, hey there, everyone. I'm so excited to see the next iteration of these updates, and I'm very happy seeing how many of the comments have been picked up at this time. My biggest remaining concern, and I know we've talked about this some before, is the update to the guidelines for accessory structures when we haven't really done the process toward a design guideline update for accessory structures. And I know at the last meeting we talked about we need some degree of update to the materials requirements right now, and then perhaps we circle back later once the actual focused work on accessory structures has happened. I think if that's how it goes, then okay. It kind of puts the Landmark Preservation Commission and staff in the way of a lot of irritation when the rules change twice in a couple of years when they've been stable for a long time. And right now, we still have this kind of basic structural issue where the rules for garages are still the same rules that are going to be applied to other types of accessory structures like ADUs. That feels to me very much like the first thing that needs to be addressed, because we've been reviewing ADUs to basically garage standards for years now, and it's not working very well from the perspective of designers and of the neighborhood. So I don't know if there's a useful discussion to get out of that. I guess I'm just taking the temperature, making sure that everyone is very comfortable with, these things will need to be updated again, hopefully very soon, hopefully within 2 years from what I understand. So that's it. Thanks.
It's great feedback. Yeah. I am going to look real quickly.
Yeah, that is a good point. I mean, what is the next rollout of phase 2? Like,
That's what I'm looking up.
Yeah.
Hold on a second. All right, topics. ADUs. That's on it. Window replacement and alterations to historic buildings, but largely focusing on windows because that seems to be the hot topic there. ADUs and accessory structures. Accessibility we wanted to address because that's not well integrated into the rest of the design guidelines. For example, we've had some comments about including accessibility features in retaining walls, like putting a ramp in a retaining wall, that kind of thing. Let's see what else. And then cleaning up signage as well, and the rest of the site work. So like pergolas and stuff like that are very low issue, but just making sure we're clean up that section, chapter 5.
So I know when we started this process, it was kind of discussed as to, hey, this is gonna, with the community, that, hey, this is gonna be broke out into phases. Because as he brings up a good point, is there gonna be a lot of frustration that the guidelines keep changing and people are, having to constantly read a new and adapt to a new standard? Like, was there any feedback when we had presented that to the community about having concerns to staggering or phasing the updates?
It's always been something that we've been worried about, but wanting to just get these adopted so that people aren't designing to what was discussed 3 years ago and adopted 3 years later, that kind of thing. Because we knew that this was going to be a long-term process, and right now we're seeing projects where people are designing things to the new guidelines that haven't been adopted yet. We're having, the new construction can have siding that would be between 4 and 6 inches potentially, and you just saw one today that's 5 inches. Doesn't meet the current guidelines, but will if adopted with the next set of guidelines. So we're trying to minimize that, but I'm sure there's going to be frustration. Brittany and Jesse. Yeah.
The guidelines were intended to be a living document anyways, and were intended to be updated probably almost every year.
Yeah.
The fact that we haven't updated them in since 2016 is why now there's more major changes as opposed to minor changes. So I think one of our goals is to stay on top of this update, set up the document in a format we can all, because there's a lot of behind the scenes conversations going on about how we keep this document a living document now, and not just related to these guideline changes that we're making, that we're showing publicly, I guess I should say. How do we maintain this document? How do we get this into a format that we can all, as Landmark staff, maintain and edit and make these small changes?
And get adopted by LPC. It's not like we're going to be editing these on our own, but
Yeah, and I would totally agree. I think that it was pretty clear to community members that this is already a heavy lift. The amount of research that we've put in to even doing presentations on alterations that we could possibly do based on what other cities are doing. I think it's very clear that it's a heavy lift just to do it even at sections at a time. And what I've heard mostly from my applicants, as Jen kind of indicated, is that there's a bit of excitement and a need to jump the gun, and they're this really charged anticipation of the guidelines updates coming out. So I don't think it's so much of a focus on it coming out in stages, so much as that it is people being excited about it coming out as soon as possible. And this is the best way that our team can currently manage that, is to break it up into smaller pieces. And even that is a lot of work.
And slower than we thought.
Yeah, I'd also say, like, yes, we need the material guidelines now for accessory structures. Based on the last commission discussion, we made those material guidelines a little more conservative than we would maybe like to push the commission to consider. And one of the reasons is because we don't have guidelines on how to deal with accessory structures in terms of mass and scale right now. So if only like I foresee maybe those material guidelines get more flexible, if anything, not more restrictive. So that would be the big change. And flexibility is always what we hear from the public.
I would say also that breaking it up into stages like this allows us to be a lot more thoughtful in what we're changing and how flexible we are. We're putting in more time and energy to make sure that those are meeting the public needs, as well as what the commission is comfortable with and supportive of.
And I also, I think that, you know, in a couple years, if we realize that what we did with the solar isn't flexible enough and we should be doing something else, or there's new technology out there, we can address that in phase 3, or we can address it again in phase 2. It really depends. Like, this is, again, it's a living document. We'll be making tweaks probably every year for the rest of our lives. Yay.
Graham, you better go pick up your kid.
It's true. It's lucky that daycare is about 10 minutes from home. So I was waiting for my introduction to say thanks again, and we'll see you all soon. Elliot, thanks. Yep. See y'all.
Sorry, I just knew he had to go and I was getting nervous. I was like, it's 5 minutes after he said he was going to leave. So were there any other public comments?
The only other person on is a staff member.
Oh, okay. I just wanted to make sure. Well, thank you, Stuart and Ozzy, for hanging in here. Like, round of applause to you guys.
It looks like Ozzy still has his hand up. I don't know if he has something else, or they have something else to say, or if they looks like they took their hand down.
Good comments, though. Sorry, I didn't mean to stop the discussion altogether. If there's anything else, I just wanted to make sure. Brittany, is it freezing where you are?
So I don't have AC at my house at home, and I'm in the office today. So it always feels cold to me when I'm here because I'm not used to AC, Kelly.
Me neither. They were supposed to install it in my house today and it didn't happen. I won't explain why. Has nothing to do with zoning.
Well, do you all have any other comments? If you want to send us any draft markups or anything, you're welcome to do that. Are there big picture things, little picture things?
Doesn't sound like it.
I have a question, and maybe doesn't have to occur within the context of the meeting. Forget which mansion on, I'll have to email you. There's a huge mechanical unit on top of a historic house that I don't remember being considered when we did a review.
We'll take a look.
I don't remember the address. It's on Clarkson. I'll email you something with a picture. You can check, see if we did or didn't.
Sounds good.
Is it the Zhang mansion?
Yes, apparently.
We reviewed it.
With the mechanical unit on the roof?
They had one there already. So we
It's as big as a small car.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Yeah. We reviewed it. They had one there already. I think it's just a different color. So
Well, the guideline updates are looking great. So thank you. And we'll send you any additional info, hopefully in a timely fashion, since we know you're in a crunch.
Yeah, great.
Well, thanks. I'll go ahead and close the meeting. It's 4:54. So enjoy your evening.